I've been waiting to do another episode like this. I finally got 3 French recordings together, and we now do the 3rd episode of our French Me Baby series.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, looking back, we've been doing this for, a year and a half now. And our largest number of downloads are for our episode 10. I still don't know why. The 10th episode, Fiesta.
And it keeps being downloaded, doesn't it?
Keeps being downloaded every week.
So I'm afraid to listen to it because I think we're a lot better at this now than we were. I would hate to hear what we sounded like. I would hope so after a year and a half.
But that's the one that we had the first Renitsky recording on, so that could be part of the appeal. But other than that episode, the other 2 that seem to keep being downloaded are French Me Baby and French Me Again Baby episodes.
So we had to go with another one of those, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to have to do one more.
So this is the 3rd installment in that series, which is called, of course, Keep Frenching Me, Baby.
That's right.
Oh, boy. Well, because let's face it, we all want to be Frenched, don't we?
Well, especially at least musically, because, as we point out on the program all the time, the French have a way with sounds and especially timbre. Yes. And so the French approach is a unique sort of national kind of concept of music that goes back into history and continues to the modern day. So we always find lots of French things to listen to, and other nationalities too. And next week's going to be something a little bit different, but I'm not going to give that away.
We'll get to
yet.
that at the end, though. Yeah, I don't want to kind of spoil the episode. You have to listen to the end or fast forward to the end if you want to know what that is.
But we're always getting lots of French things in, but we had kind of an overflow of French things, so we decided,
all of a sudden. I've been trying to get a French episode up all year, really, but it's been hard. I haven't had enough material, but now I've got enough for 3 more episodes, I think. So I don't know what I'm going to do. Are we going to do 3 French episodes, or are we just going to...
Yeah, we'll probably space it out. Yeah, break it up. Different things.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to classify things instrumentally by, different kind of instrumentations. It's also cool to do it by nationalities. Well, we've had some Italian moments recently. It'll be fun to do things French this week. If we've got any new listeners out there, you're wondering, what are these guys talking about? You're listening to Adult Music. That's the podcast with music for the mature mind, specifically focusing on classical music and jazz. Once in a while we get into some world music or some kind of other types of things that cross the genre lines. And this is episode 68. And before we get into our French exposition here, I want to remind listeners, if you check out the episode description, you'll find links for all the music we're going to discuss on streaming. That's to Spotify and Apple Music. Also at the top of the description, you'll find a link to the full episode playlist. That's all the music in one place on our preferred streaming platform, which also comes from France, and that is the Deezer.
I wonder where they came up with that name.
I don't know. Yeah, it's a funny name. But we really like Deezer.
Doesn't sound French at all.
They're a smaller company that competes with all the giants, Apple and Amazon, and they do a good job. They were having CD quality long before the others jumped on, and that's why I chose them a few years back. Anyway, they have a nice catalog and a good selection of classical and jazz music there. You can also listen to the podcast on Deezer. They've been stepping up their podcast game too. Just look for us, Adult Music Podcast, podcast and our playlist.
I just want to say, if you want to hear a podcast on Deezer, you got to really know what you want to hear, because they don't really lay them out very well. They're really good with music, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you can kind of find stuff that way, but podcasts, they haven't really gotten their act together, really.
They don't have the discovery thing going, which is a real problem with all podcast platforms in general. The categories, the recommendations on most platforms aren't really that good, but hopefully things will improve. Anyway, we're there. And if you don't see the links for all the streaming links or the playlists on whatever app or platform you're on, because some platforms don't fully integrate all of our descriptions there, you can always jump over to our host site, which is Podbean, Podbean, and everything is neat and clean there. You can follow all the links for this and all the past episodes. Now, if you do enjoy listening to us, if you're intrigued by the music that we include here, please do follow or subscribe on whatever app or platform you happen to be listening to us on. If you take a moment, give us a ranking, write a short review. That also helps us get listed in the recommended categories among all the K-pop and strange podcasts that are out there. And that helps us grow our audience. You can now find us also on Facebook. We've got a page there. Please pop over there if you're on Facebook. There's a link from Podbean to there. You can leave a message or comment. I've been posting lots of videos. Anytime I find a new album that I know I'm going to get on the podcast, I put it. There's a couple great releases. There's an awesome Italian trumpet release there this week too.
Yeah,
that's going to get on the podcast.
Sent me the link for it. I haven't heard it yet, though.
Yeah, and a couple other new ones. There's a great Brian Landrus Red List. It's kind of a Save the Animals thing, which is, I guess it's all right, for it's whales and stuff, but it's bass clarinet and bari sax that features.
As long as it's not your girlfriend.
Yeah, well, or anything that I barbecue, like lambs and cows and stuff. So, yeah. Anyway, so you can find us on. You can find us on Facebook and catch out our warped humor that we post during the week with good music links too. And if you want to get in touch with us directly, any comments or questions, we also like to hear from you by email. Our address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, @gmail.com. So get in touch if you have anything to say or any questions. We'd be happy to hear from you.
All right. Okay, so we're going to do this French music episode today, and we have a theme now, don't we?
Just a little bit. Well, we're live on location from an unknown cafe in Paris. Oh, yeah, there we go. The ambiance is right.
When I hear that, I feel like I wonder where that whole accordion, that really carefree, light accordion theme comes from, because the French, to me, aren't like that at all. But
yeah,
it does kind of give you this nice kind of feeling, and in Paris, it's an interesting place that way. I just, the whole the look of it and all that stuff. I really it's really beautiful. I love it there.
Well, we know that music from France is always intriguing from any period, and lots of interesting things going on. And we're gonna go. Start things out kind of with a French connection more, going way back tonight. Yeah,
French connection. Okay, so let's get into the classical recordings here. The first is called, I didn't practice my French this week, so let me see if I can say this. It's called De la Cour de Louis XIV à Shippangan. I think that Shippangan came out more Italian.
Yeah, I think your Italian accent came out.
Shippangan, hey. No, chant traditionnel acadien. Air de cour du... Oh, geez. What is this? It's... Oh, God. 70e siècle. I think that's what it is. The 17th century. Because they don't... but the thing is, the French Canadians would say, this is really crazy about French and Canadian French, because the Canadian French would say what we would say. They'd say 17e, the 17th. But in when you want to say 17 in oh no, that's not right. This is 15. Oh, I'm messing it up. No, it's 17e. Sorry, I said it wrong. I'm getting confused here. Okay, Air de cour du 17e siècle. Okay, so the 17th century. Basically, what this means is from the court of Louis XIV to Shippangan, which is a place in Canada. Okay, traditional chants or songs, traditional Acadian songs, and air de cour, court songs of the 17th century. And this is sung by Suzie LeBlanc, soprano. She's a Canadian soprano. Marie Nadeau-Tremblay, who plays the Baroque violin, and Vincent Lauzer, recorder, and Sylvain Bergeron, archlute and Baroque guitar. This is on the Atma Classique label. Okay, so this music comes from, as we said, the Baroque era. I just totally messed up that title in French. I got to go back to France one day. Okay. This is the, by the way, the fourth album of Acadian songs that Suzie LeBlanc has recorded. She's like a big fan of this repertoire. Wow. And she's, if you do a search for her, like recording, say on Amazon or something, you'll see that she's, like most sopranos, she's like sung on 200 albums or something, operas and like her solo things, and as a part of an ensemble and all of this. But then there are these kind of pet projects that she has, and this is one of them. She's Canadian, as I mentioned. The other three, by the way, the most recent one before this one was Christmas songs from traditional Christmas songs from the Acadian, traditional Christmas Acadian songs, which sounds pretty appealing. I mean, I may have to give that a listen too, because this one was really beautiful. I'll just spill the beans right now. In this one, she's taken some of these folk songs, which are very pentatonic in really modal in character, like any folk song, really. And she's programmed them with Air du Cour from Louis XIV's court. So those are going to be more like art songs, like the new Baroque style. They're going to be in major and minor keys, that sort of thing. The new for the time, meaning, okay? In this release, the booklet notes don't tell us much. I had to look up some stuff. They weren't really very helpful, which is too bad, because I don't know much about Acadian music, but I can tell you that Shippangan is a Canadian town in New Brunswick, Canada, not New Brunswick, New Jersey. Oh. Can you imagine? Oh, man. Okay, and Acadia was located in what is now Eastern Canada's maritime provinces, which are Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island, as well as parts of Quebec, and present-day Maine was also once part of Canada, up to the Kennebec River. Any Maine listeners out there? Okay. Acadian songs all came from different regions of France, and songs, like people's, are nomadic. I really wish people would keep this in mind. Music really can't be contained. I like to think of music as like a gas, where if you put a gas in a container, it fills the container and takes the shape of the container. It just, music does that too. It just fills whatever ears it can, really. It'll travel all over the world if just set free. So I don't know. I think that's kind of our model here on adult music. Anyway, we like music to spread as far and wide as possible. We
don't believe in kind of appropriation kind of ideas. We think once it's out there,
think you can appropriate music. As an artist, you can, but there's a listeners.
But once it gets out there, it just spreads and goes all over the place. So
Yeah. Okay, so these came from all different regions of France, these songs, and they wound up traveling to Canada with the first settlers, these songs did. And the Air de Cour from Louis XIV's court were a subtle art form inspired by Italian song, as was most Baroque music, really. It all started in Italy, and played a major role in French song. Okay, it would, again, become a bit softer. It started out as like Italian, so just like French cooking, it started out as really Italian cooking, and then got subtler as it went on.
Well, I have to tell you that I got Frenched, before I was born.
In what way?
Well, because almost half of me is, descends from this kind of lineage here. I have,
cool.
French who came into Quebec and these eastern provinces, and then came down to New York.
And, you're way upstate New York, though. You're up near in Rochester, is that right?
Well, I'm as closer to Canada, Albany.
You're closer to Canada. So. I guess maybe it's the music school up there, but some of the best American jazz musicians, and even in popular music, came from that area. Like
upstate New York, I mean,
Steve
going
Gadd,
east to west,
played on
Rochester and out there,
really
Chuck Mangione and Don Menza, all the way out to Buffalo and like that. It's somehow there's not a lot else to do in the winter except practice music in upstate New York. So, a lot of musicians come from there.
It's cold up there. Yeah, boy.
But these songs were all really kind of nice, and I really liked this sparse but clear Baroque instrumentation with these instruments here. So I got drawn into them more than I thought I would.
Yeah, it was a nice appetizer even for tonight's program, which I've rather cleverly, programmed as a 3-course meal, as we would in France, would we not? Okay. This would be the appetizer, I guess. Anyway, it's a set of songs, and let's go through them. Jean-Baptiste de Bousset and Michel Blavet. Now, the pronunciation of these songs is kind of, because they had a different way of saying them in the Baroque era. Pourquoi, right? Pourquoi du rossignol, which is why sweet nightingale. Rossignol is the nightingale. Very common theme in music in general, because they sing. Nightingales sing.
And the
Even
lyrics
appears in Romeo and Juliet. Yeah.
The lyrics for all of these songs are really kind of, romantic, kind of longing, kind of chivalry type of themes.
And also highly populated by nightingales.
Yes, and there's some of them that are kind of humorous too as they get through the program. So. Oh
yeah, we'll talk about those. Okay, so the first one, man, we start right away. Very pretty. There's a slow Baroque guitar accompaniment, very sparse and still, and it'll just set this beautiful mood for you. And then there's a vibrato-less violin, so period instrument style, basically no vibrato on the violin, and it really does suit this music very well.
Yeah.
It makes it sound a bit austere.
Yeah, it's got that little rough edge to the violin on this recording, right. That little burr that sounds really warm and nice.
Yeah, so you have a somber sort of mood, and the voice has it's a beautiful voice, by the way, Suzie LeBlanc. This is easy to listen to, but I know a lot of people they say, I don't like opera with these big voices, but this is an operatic voice, but she's not singing at full power here. She's in a more lyrical sort of very pretty kind of mode. It sounds great. Let's see. There's a kind of a reverb halo around the voice, but not too much. It suits the voice and the performance very well. I rather liked it. It's almost like a spotlight on the voice in a way. And I like the whole image that is conjured up in sound, in your room as you listen to this on your speakers. It's a gorgeous song. The lyrics question why the nightingale has come to awaken the singer before dawn, and she doesn't get an answer. It's just the question.
Yeah.
It sets a lovely meditative mood for the whole album. All right, the next one, I'm guessing that one would be one of the Air de Cour that would have been heard in the court of Louis XIV. Next, we get a traditional song, Chanson des Amants, the song of the lovers. This is Baroque violin and guitar. It's an instrumental. Actually, I'm guessing that. I don't really know. I'm guessing. No, it's a guitar. It's definitely the Baroque guitar. Much in the same mood as the previous song, and it continues that late night tranquil mood. This is a really great record for late at night. It just sounds really kind of like after a few whiskeys when you're really just kind of winding down. It's really, really good for that. It's got a lovely melody, and this would be one of the Acadian songs. The next song, Rosignolet Sauvage, again, there's that nightingale. This is the first of the Acadian songs that is sung. So we have a Baroque guitar and soprano on this one. This is Suzie LeBlanc singing. Another slow song, atmospheric. The singer asks the nightingale to teach her to speak, talk, and love in the way that he, the nightingale, does. This has a folk song quality to it with its modal approach, and you'll notice that right away. It just kind of, I think it's pentatonic probably. Yeah. And it's got this ancient quality to it. Folk songs generally are pentatonic. Think rock and roll, except that without the driving rhythms and stuff. They're really the same as harmonically. But there you go. Anyway. Next is Michel Lambert, Ma Bergère. This, just the title tells you this comes from Louis XIV's court. But Bergère is a female shepherdess, let's say. And the Louis XIV court was just crazy about shepherds and shepherdesses and the things they got up there in the mountains.
Wow.
We talked about this long ago on that. We did the album with the sheep on the cover. I can't remember what.
Oh yeah.
Right?
The French one, right? Yeah.
Yeah. This type of song would be called a brunette, which has something to do with shepherds and shepherdesses. I had mentioned the people of Louis XIV's court. They were under. They didn't really. You think of like aristocrats. They just sit around all day doing nothing. But they're not doing nothing. They're supervising their lands, and they're also kind of in this sort of tight structure where they have to behave a certain way, and
right.
and they kind of feel sort of restrained by the life that the image they
decorum,
have to put across.
right.
So then they fantasize about being free in the mountains with their sheep, kind of getting it on with some shepherd girl or something. But so that's what's going on with the popularity of these types of songs at that time. All the instruments on the album are on this one, I think. Same tempo as the previous. Nothing wrong with that. These are all like the same tempo. It will pick up a bit, but this is generally the tempo for most of the album. This kind of somber, slow tempo. The instrumentation, the thing that's holding interest between these songs, they're all the same tempo, is the varieties in instrumentation. This is a really cleverly arranged program, so you're not going to get bored by it unless you just don't like the music, I guess. LeBlanc's voice is pleasant. Her approach is varied enough to hold the attention. And next we get a traditional song, Le Berger. Now, this one is not from Louis XIV's court. It's a traditional Acadian song, but it's about a shepherd. You can hear the pentatonic folk qualities right at the beginning of this. By the way, pentatonic, penta 5, so it's a 5-note scale, as opposed to a 7-note scale, which is going to have more of a sort of pull towards, the way the notes are arranged, a pull towards a certain tone. But pentatonic scales tend to be more. They don't really have a tonal center. So you could stop anywhere. Anyway. Or less of a tonal center, let's say. This is led by the flute, and there's an arch lute in this one, so we get a little subtle change in the plucked instrument sound. This is a fairly long song at 6 minutes and 50 seconds. I guess, those it sang all day, I guess, those people. The tempo has all been the same, no complaints there. It's meditative. This touching song features a shepherd leaving a shepherdess because she's been unfaithful to him. Oh, with another shepherd, apparently. She pleads with him that they go off and be together again. I guess we can only assume that this is what they do. We don't really know that, but just because she gets her pleading words in last, we assume that they do, in fact, go off together. And the song ends with a request. Okay, track 6, Louis-Claude Daquin. Now, this guy, Daquin, wrote... You may be familiar with his Christmas organ works. Now, if you go to he wrote these pieces called Noels, and they're often played in church. If you go to church on Christmas week or up until Epiphany, a lot of organists will pull these out and play them. But that's not this. This is what we have here is this is a piece by Daquin called Le Coucou, and then there's a traditional song that it's kind of mixed with, called Le Matot. So it goes back and forth between this Daquin composition Le Coucou and the Acadian song Le Matot. Okay, we have a tempo change here. This is all about birds. The cuckoo is the cuckoo, of course, and we talked about the cuckoo when in Pederas Vast's work from. Was that last week or was that 2 weeks ago? I don't remember now.
Just
the weeks
recently.
Gone by so
I know
fast.
that.
Yeah. It was recent. It was in the last few weeks, if not last week. Okay, so the first part, this is a more traditional, interpretation of the cuckoo sound. The first part features a high-speed recorder figure. It almost sounds like a cuckoo clock because he's playing it so fast. The recorder and the violinist sounding the cuckoo's call too. Impressive, charming, also very virtuosic. The first time we're really hearing virtuosity on this album. At the minute and 52-second mark, we get a traditional vocal song. That's Le Matot. The change to the pentatonic is very noticeable, and that tune sounds like a rustic dance. Now, a matot actually is not a bird. It's a tomcat, so one of these alley cat type things.
Yeah, I like in this one, too, there's kind of like a country fiddle quality to it with a little kind of bent pitch play in there that sticks out and sounds, kind of interesting in the mix.
This is a rather naughty song, by the way, Le Mateau. It's the Tomcat is like a guy, just like a Tomcat who would be kind of just looking to get his lady cat there, you know. But this guy's looking for a tryst with another man's wife. At the end of the song, he's caught by the husband in the room hiding under a wash basin. So justice is served. Anyway. Okay. 7, Michel Lambert. And we're going to hear that song again at the end, by the way.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that. Michel Lambert, Juger de ma douleur. This means judging by my suffering. People really liked singing about their suffering in the Renaissance. And in the Baroque, that kind of went away. They were all kind of a little more emotional or something like that. But slow in tempo, led by the recorder, more refined in its harmony, surely from the court. It's a long composition, 8 minutes, 24 seconds. 2 minutes of instrumentals, and then the voice enters in the second minute. And it's one of those songs, you've rejected me, now I can't go on living, that I, as an Italian, have heard from every Italian person I've ever met. Okay, it's very pretty and sensitively done here. Okay, and now next comes a composer that I really like a lot from the Renaissance era, Robert de Vissé. And he generally wrote works for the guitar, Baroque guitar, any kind of string instrument, lute. I have a few recordings of his music on them. They're all really good. Anyway, here we get an instrumental from him, Prélude, Sarabande, et Gigue, in G minor. These are all, the prelude is a prelude, and the other two are dances. It's a 3-movement work, and it's all on one track. I will break this down for you, and it's for solo arch lute in this case. The first 2 movements are slow and stately, a sarabande by definition is, and the gigue, starting around 3 minutes and 5 seconds, picks up the tempo only a little. It's not really like a all-out raucous gigue. It's a pretty relaxing meditative piece. There's a gorgeous and very intellectually appealing descending line when the melody heads towards a cadence at the very end of the track. Listen to that. Track 9. Le coq et la poule. Okay, because it's the hen and the rooster and the hen. A folk. Oh, by the way, so le coq, C-O-Q. That is the. Anyone out there likes sports or likes, that's the French national, at least the soccer team's symbol. Okay, they're on their shirt they have their rooster. There's a company called Le Coq Sportif, which means the sporting rooster. I'm trying to work that out. I can't get an image of what that would look like in my head anyway.
Well, I mean, I don't know, cockfights maybe? I don't know.
Oh, maybe. Or maybe he's...
That used to be the most popular American entertainment until it got banned. And then I guess we went straight with horse racing. No, of course not. But
maybe he's sporting with the ladies too. You don't know.
Could be.
Anyway, Le Coq et la Poule is a folk song. It's a traditional Acadian song about a priest.
Oh, no.
Who separates a rooster from a hen, but they get back together. The hen has fainted without her rooster guy, and the rooster goes to her and gives her the best medicine, wink, wink, and she's all right again. There's some virtuosic recorder playing in this, and as has been the case throughout, LeBlanc characterizes the song well. This has a dancey rhythm to it. Those priests always separating. Making sure people just aren't happy. Anyway, I especially like the muted strings at the end of the piece. Nice atmosphere on this one. These are fun to talk about, I have to say. Jacques Martin, Haute Terre, Je suis aimé de celle que j'adore. And this is taken from an air by Michel Lambert. This starts with a solo recorder. It's an instrumental. And it seems that all 4 minutes and 26 seconds are reserved for the recorder solo. It's got an appealing melody with some ornamentation added. Vincent Lauzer, the recorder player on this, keeps the line of the composition very clear. Really pretty. It's nice to hear the recorder solo like this. I like this a lot. Honoré d'embrouille pour charmer les ennuis. To charm the ills. Okay, this is track 11. This is soprano and arch lute. A lot of songs about nightingales on this album, as I've mentioned, and here the singer endures the nightingale song to charm her ills. She's languishing in love, and the nightingale pities her troubles with his song. But she's not happy about that because it's making her sadder still. I like the programming. LeBlanc has a lot of vocal ornaments that resemble those in the previous piece for recorder. So this was rather clever programming. Again, this piece followed the recorder, composition, and we're hearing Suzie LeBlanc singing in much the way the recorder played. It's kind of nice. It's like a timbre change and almost sounding like a similar piece. Her approach is much the same as the recorder's, giving a sense of continuity. Next, here he is again, Robert Devizet. I love this guy. And Michel Lambert. This is two different compositions that are mixed together. Chacun by Devizet and Gouton en deux repos, which is, let's see, there's a song there. Okay, so the archlute and recorder play the Chacun. It's charming and soothing. And at the 3-minute and 17-second mark, we get the transition to the song. It's a really nice transition, by the way. Make sure you give that a listen or pay attention when it comes up. It'll just make you happy. It's a rather funny lyric for such a tender song. The singer must stop loving Sylvie. Now, Sylvie, she's kind of a character in these type of songs that keeps reappearing. I think she's the more... The shepherdess that kind of gets it on with a lot of shepherds. There's one who's really constant, and there's a shepherdess that's I can't remember the names now because they all had names, and this one character would be faithful to her shepherd, and Sylvie is just kind of living it up. She's Anyway, the singer must stop loving Sylvie for the moment because her grip is harsh, but his continuing desire for her troubles his heart. And he wonders if he gives in, what will become of him for the rest of his life? I bet every man who ever got married wondered the same thing. Anyway, the last track on the album is Le Marteau Again. This is a different version. It's actually a straight-ahead folk version of the song. Very different than everything we've heard on this album. It's by a folk band called Vichten. And they're a Canadian folk music trio that does Acadian songs. Vichten here is accompanying Suzie LeBlanc with percussion and voices. Ellen Torrey is playing the guitar, and it's the only track she appears on. And the backing vocalists are Emmanuel and Pastel LeBlanc, who are apparently, I guess, Suzie's sisters. I don't know, maybe. I don't know. It didn't say. Yeah.
You expect like a Richie Havens version of something going on here. It gets kind of like it could have been at Woodstock when they did this one.
Anyway, first of all, Pastel is a really pretty name for a woman. Wow. I hadn't thought about that. I got to put that in my...
It's better than Estelle, I guess, yeah.
Estelle is good. That means star.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, so this is a nice way to end the album. It's a little bit of a surprise. It's sort of like and it's got this light, sort of nice dancing
drumming
feel to
in there,
it.
too, yeah.
There's drumming, yeah. All right, so this album, I think, is a bit of magic, especially in the Acadian folk songs. I really enjoyed this a lot, and I'm really curious now to hear the Christmas album, which will be on my Christmas listening list for this year. That came out about 5 years ago or so. She's done, this is the fourth of these albums that she's done. The Acadian songs conjure up an ancient past, but I don't think it's that ancient. It's really just, although they sound really old, so maybe it does do that. Suzie LeBlanc sings them sensitively. She's in the idiom, which is really amazing because a lot of singers who train in the conservatory, I mean, they're kind of like all technique and not much feeling, but Suzie LeBlanc's got all of this. She sounds great. She sounds like really made to sing these songs, and she obviously loves them. You just hear that. And that'll just make you like them even more. This album won't disturb polite company. It has the air of an album played in a cultured house. It's enjoyable listening. It's gentle. It's ideal for late night. Anyone with an ear for gentle folk music or earlier ages should hear this. Yeah, this is good.
I liked it. Yeah, it's got an earthiness to it that sort of connects French music to the New World. The sparse but varied instrumentation keeps pulling you in. The recorder sounds great. I like the recorder and violin interplay on a lot of the pieces. The way the tones blend together and then separate to do the various independent lines is really interesting. There's lots of rhythmic variety. If you can get a hold of the album notes and look at the lyrics, there's a lot of comedy in there.
Yeah, there
it's
is.
all, dramatic, romantic things, but wink, wink, sort of hinted meanings as well. And it's done, I don't want to say lighthearted. Some of it is lighthearted, but it's heartfelt, and the musicianship and feeling of expression is good. Yeah, I think you can enjoy this at nighttime. In the morning might be good too. Yeah, it's just interesting music. It's done in a fresh way, so it doesn't sound, like they're trying just to capture something from a period, but it gets a new sort of relevance for the performance as it is done now. So, yeah, enjoyable.
Yeah, good way to unwind. It's really mostly a meditative album for the most part. All right. Our second album is yet another. I have a lot of these. Recording of Ravel's, two concertos for piano, and then some of it mixed in with some of his Mélodies or songs.
Yeah.
And this is kind of an interesting combination. Not only that, but the songs that they chose for this are not often performed. So I was kind of happy to hear this. This is by Cédric Tiberghien, who's the pianist, and Stéphane Degout, the baritone player, and an orchestra and conductor that I really follow. I'm interested in every new recording they make, Les Siècles and François-Xavier Roth, and this is on the Harmonia Mundi label. Now, I bought this thinking, okay, it's a Les Siècles album and Tiberghien is playing on it, but it's really Tiberghien's album. He's the only musician on every track. The rest are there to accompany or fill out the program. And Degout, I guess, and Les Siècles both kind of share it with him, but he's really the star. And in fact, he's the soloist in the piano concerto in G. And this is a very famous work. It's kind of inspired by jazz, so it's kind of jazzy. I think by this point, Ravel had heard Gershwin's music, and also he was also very interested in just American forms, the blues and jazz, and of course, being the dapper, elegant man that he was, he had to dress it up. but when he does it, it sounds fantastic. It's like it doesn't sound like the jazz elements disappear. Really, they just kind of just feel good. They always feel good anyway, but they're just a little too elegant to be nasty. Anyway, the first movement, Allegramente, starts with the famous pistol shot. Okay, it starts with a pistol shot, and I've seen this performed live. The conductor actually has, I don't know what it is. It's not a pistol, but it's kind of like a little pop gun.
Or a start pistol
holds over
for
his
the horse
head
races or something.
Yeah, and he fires it over his head, and then the whole, and it does kind of start like a horse race because you sort of have this piano figuration going at this really rapid speed, very quietly, and the orchestra's kind of, the winds are sort of bubbling over. It's a really cool, it's really pretty effect, and rather sensual too, I thought. The sound at the beginning has an incredible, even, gossamer quality to the lines. All of those register clearly. This is an amazing recording, I thought.
Really nice dynamics. It's wide-ranging. You want to listen to this in a quiet space. Yeah. And you're going to hear soft to loud, a big range here. But everything's captured very clearly. Yeah. Yeah, so if you're interested in orchestral detail, as I am, this is a really good recording to be hearing. This is I said it right here too. It's a fairly quiet recording, though very clear. A little volume boost will have you in the right listening space. Good presence to the orchestra. You always want to hear details in Ravel's orchestra writing. He was one of the best orchestrators who ever lived, basically. And it seems like all the great orchestrators all lived at the beginning of the 20th century. I guess there was just something in the air then. Debussy is another one. And we talked to Nielsen, Sibelius, Mahler, of course. Yeah. There are a number of them. Even Schoenberg, really. Yeah. There are others, too. I'm just not thinking of them all. But there are a lot of sudden changes of character subsumed into the overall sound. This works very well. Again, this is that... I think it was last week. I don't remember when, but we were talking about how
editing in movies influenced the way classical works were written, because instead of sort of like modulating to a new key, you would just go there like a splice in a film. People started to accept this because of movies, right?
Actually,
so it's kind of
around that time too, because now we're talking like early 20th century recording. These are the first recordings, and I believe Ravel was one of the earliest composers who was actually present at the recordings of his music. And contributed his ideas into an enthusiasm into capturing the music to be produced and replayed later. So this is a new idea that's born around this time too, and something we take for granted today. And we just we listen to all these things for the podcast, and as everyone does. But from the standpoint of the composer, that his music was going to be captured permanently and then replayed. This was something new, and Ravel was there and present for some of the early recordings of his works.
When we listen to classical music, by the way, one of the things we need, it's a good idea to know a bit about history and to know what was happening or what the norms were at the time that the music was written, because a lot of it. A lot of what was happening around really has a big influence on music. Like I said, music and movies and editing kind of worked its way into music, where like new sections just sound edited in. For that, you can think of Stravinsky's Ballet Petrushka. It's with all those sudden changes. I think movies played a bit of a role in that. I had something. Yeah, it's sort of an important thing. Like a lot of us think that we're just supposed to understand all music. Oh, it's music. It doesn't really have meaning, but it does. And classical music, it's what, 400 years now. It's been expanded back into the Renaissance era and the early medieval. So from around the year 1300 on, you have 700 plus years of music, and you're supposed to just understand all that as like somebody wrote it yesterday. It's not. These people were all in very different circumstances than we were when they wrote this music, and it helps to just learn a little bit about that. Somebody once told me, this was actually Robert Greenberg. I think this is on his teaching company class, where he talks about how we think of the ancient past as just a long time ago. Like, for example, ancient Rome, ancient Greece, ancient Egypt. So it's all, in our minds, very old, a long time ago. But then he points out that the pyramids were built like 2,000 plus years before. I don't know off the top of my head. Ancient Rome, okay, and so someone like Julius Caesar, who lived a long time ago, would have looked at the pyramids as a thing of wonder the same way we do. So Julius Caesar lived 2,000 years ago, even more than that, a little more now. And we think of him as living a long time ago. But Julius Caesar, when he was alive, the pyramids were already 2,000 years old. So he looked at the pyramids the same way we look at him and the pyramids. So a little historical perspective is important.
And on a micro level, I used to think back in the 80s, I looked at my mom's Beatles albums and I looked, 1963. That was a long time ago.
I know, right?
And now, I was still looking at things in the 90s saying, oh, that was cool. And then I realized, oh, it was 30 years ago now. So time, your perspective of time is always changing, based on your own limited experience. And so we have to expand that into the longer realms of history. And it's hard to get a perspective sometimes.
Yeah, not only that, but computers are really just speeding everything up for us now, too. I mean, just even like 10 years ago seems like ancient history already, It's funny what you said. I remember 1987, I was in college at the time, and the Beatles album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club.
By that time, it was 20 years old.
It was 20 years ago today, right?
Right.
Sgt. Pepper taught the band to play. And in 1987, of course, all the journalists on the 20th anniversary of the album, the headline was always, it was 20 years ago today. And I was in college at the time. And I remember thinking, wow, that was a long time ago. This is an old album.
Yeah.
And now it's what, like 50 plus years ago? I mean,
55,
what happened?
Yeah. Where have you been?
Yeah, I know. I don't even remember those 30 years in between that. What happened?
It's all condensed down.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I think classical music, all that classical music listening just made time stand still for me.
Yeah.
It still does. So if you want to be young forever, listeners.
Yeah, stretch out the 700 years and you'll live forever.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let me see here. Okay. Roth, the conductor, François-Xavier Roth, has caught my ear on many occasions in the past, and so he's in good form here, keeping the rhythm going steadily. It's almost kind of like it's not quite a machine or mechanical, but it is kind of like very, very steady. There's no, as it should be. Tiberghien has a very light sound on this and a good sense of the jazzy rhythms and elegant tonality that make this piece work. I really like the way the bluesy orchestra part at 2 minutes and 20 seconds was taken. I had never noticed this before in other performances, but Roth kind of makes it sort of sing out a little bit like a bluesy melody, which was nice. And it's interrupted by the piano, which I also really liked the way that happens. This is a pretty exciting performance of this movement. It's faster than usual and exposes certain orchestral and melodic details that aren't often clear. For example, I loved the harp detail at 4 minutes and 28 seconds onwards. The horn theme at 5 minutes and 30 seconds also comes across well. Usually this piece is all piano for me, but my ear is being caught by a lot more on this recording. Beautiful orchestral textures by the conductor. The piano produces a crystalline sound, and that's going to be a word I use a lot in this talking about this album. Tiberghien's sound is very crystalline, at least on this album. He doesn't sound like that when he's accompanying Alina Ibragimova, he's her sort of recital partner. But anyway, he's got that sound here. And he's got this great sound for this cascading scales and figures. This is a fantastic realization of this particular movement. Then we get to the second movement, the most famous one, Adagio Assai. And it famously starts with the long solo piano part. Tiberghien's playing seems to me to have a lot to do with the overall sound he produces, like a good French musician. I feel like the gorgeous melody here could have been more poetically taken, but it registers well enough. And also, Ravel once said that his music doesn't need to be interpreted, it just needs to be played. Like, he didn't want musicians taking liberties with what he wrote on the page. He felt like it would just come across. And I think that Tiberghien takes him at his word here. But I have heard more expressive recordings of this movement, so keep that in mind. I can't criticize this because it's a correct approach, let's say, but I just feel like some of the juice isn't squeezed out of this gorgeous melody. I think that Tiberghien airs on the metronomic side in this movement, which doesn't hurt in a Ravel performance. But he's flexible. Tiberghien is flexible enough to have you hearing the beauty of the piano writing. It's more precision than poetry, though. That's what I would say. I'm being overly sensitive in saying this, but think about that when you listen, or if you want to compare it to another recording. Let's say Christian Zimmermann's. He recorded this, right? I'm trying to remember. Anyway, I think Yuja Wang also recorded this, so you can listen to her recording and get like a different perspective. The orchestra comes in with the piano's trill at 2 minutes and 55 seconds and continues his line. I love that effect. It's so nice. It's almost like the sound of the piano morphed into something else. You know, it's almost like you're seeing it transform into something before your eyes. I like the sensitivity Roth and Siècles are bringing to the orchestral part. There's a beautiful cadence, really kind of just warming the heart at 3 minutes and 50 seconds. It's very gentle. The music continues into a darker key area after this, but nothing scary and awful. Tiberghien produces a crystalline sound in the figuration after minute 5. There's another nice cadence at 5 minutes and 33 seconds. Very elegantly and sophisticatedly taken. Really beautiful. Tiberghien seems to like the blend with the orchestra rather than stand out in this piece, and his approach to this piece anyway. So he's giving us a bit of an alternative perspective on the writing. The tempo isn't swift, but feels like it's being moved along at a good pace at the 7-minute mark. I liked this, but the speed and approach have it coming up lacking in poetry. I said that before. These musicians want you to hear what's there more than draw a feeling out of it. Nice ending on the piano trilling chords at the end. Okay, we get the third movement, the faster one. The drum thud on the opening phrase is a bit muted. I guess Roth doesn't really want it to just kind of pin you to your chair, before you start hearing the piano. The piano's figuration is clearly heard, as are the sliding brass and winds. This is another great orchestral detail on this recording. The piano's got some virtuosic writing to navigate here, and that crystalline sound of Tiberghien's comes up well here. I like the way that chiming percussion comes up with extra dimension at the 1 minute mark. A lot of orchestral detail emerges from this well-judged performance, and the piano is audible enough that one can revel into Tiberghien's virtuosity. Roth has a lot of ideas in how to characterize individual line, as though they're all important characters in a theater piece. Amazing quiet figuration right before the final statement of the opening theme, and the bass drum thud that ends the piece. This is a very exciting performance, though I thought the outer movements came across with more character and excitement than the middle movement did. But that's a minor quibble. You should probably hear this particular performance. Okay, we move on to a set of songs. Don Quixote à Dulcinea. So Don Quixote to Dulcinea. He's speaking to her, and this is Stéphane Degout and Cédric Tiberghien on the piano. Degout is a baritone. Okay, and we have three of these Don Quixote songs. The first one is Chanson Romanesque, and this is really more romantic. The romantic verses detailing what Don Quixote will do for Dulcinea out of love are bookended by dissonant piano sounds indicating Quixote's lunacy. He's really been moonstruck here. The next song is Chanson Épique, so epic song. This comes across as a hymn with the lyric praising, because it's got chords, so it's like a churchy sort of vibe to it, with the lyric praising Saint Michael for giving Don Quixote leave to be with Dulcinea. We hear the full power of Degout's voice here toward the end of the first minute, and it's a very noble sounding piece. And then the third song, a complete contrast, Chanson à boire, drinking song. This has a 20th century popular song rhythm and melody to it. It's tipsy in its rhythm and features a boisterous Stéphane Degout in this. Tiberghien characterizes the piano part well in this piece, isolating certain notes in a way a drunk might accent random words that really aren't the words you want to be accenting. It's nice. It's a late set of songs by Ravel, not heard often enough. I like it. It's nice. These aren't really my favorite compositions by him. This sounds a little thin, though, after the sumptuousness of the piano concerto, I have to say, just hearing like a voice and piano. Next, we get deux mélodies hébraïques, two Hebrew melodies. The first one is Kaddish, and this is a song, a Jewish prayer sung in Hebrew here, praising God. If you know the Te Deum in Christianity, it's kind of a similar kind of idea, let's say. The baritone carries most of the piece, the piano only ringing out bell-like from sounds at certain points of the text. I'm wondering where Ravel got the melody from, if it's original, like from some Jewish service, or if it's original if he wrote it himself, or if it actually comes from a Jewish service of some sort. It sounds like a melody that would be sung at a temple service. It's pretty powerful, and Degout does it justice. The second piece in this is L'Énigme éternelle, which is the eternal enigma. This is sung in, I guess, Yiddish. It's German. It looks like German, but I'm guessing it's Yiddish. The piano, so it's a more popular song. The piano starts with a repeating figure, bell-like, and it's brief and doesn't have many words. It's nice, a little lighter. It's kind of wondering about the mystery of the universe. Track 9 is a solo piano piece, a very famous one, Pavane pour un enfant défunt. This is a piece I played, by the way. A lot of pianists have. You need big hands to play this piece, though. It's kind of your fingers get kind of tangled up in this. Anyway, Tiberghien plays the original piano solo version from 1899, and he takes a rather fast tempo and fast tempos disguise emotion or hide emotion, and that's what happens here. Again, this is one of the pieces that Ravel said, you just have to play my pieces, don't interpret them, and that's exactly what Tiberghien is doing here. I think I prefer a warmer sound in this. Tiberghien's is a hard and shiny sound, like crystal. I can't complain. I mean, it's a good performance, but I feel like he's in too much of a hurry to get to the end. The harp-like grace notes in the end of the third and beginning of the fourth minutes are quickly but elegantly taken. Those really stood out for me. I like this a little slower, though. Okay. Tracks 10 through 12. I love these songs so much. I originally heard these. This is Trois Poèmes de Stéphane Mallarmé. And I originally heard these in their chamber music and soprano version. Dawn Upshaw sang them on her album, The Girl with Orange Lips. And just the gorgeous, like, orchestrations, the magic that Ravel pulls out of his chamber group is really something to hear. In this case, it's for the baritone and the piano. I've never heard this sung by a baritone before. And the piano isn't going to bring out all those songs that the chamber group did, but never mind. It's the chamber version is mesmerizing, but this version for piano and baritone doesn't disappoint. Degout is especially good here in the middle of his range, where he can produce a smooth, even tone. The piano figuration is gorgeous, and the piece is taken quietly and smoothly without unnecessary drama, which is perfect for this piece. Ravel's music beautifully reflects the incomprehensibility, yet fascination, this kind of hallucinatory quality of Mallarmé's poetry. They're kind of almost surreal in a way. I really love them. I really do like Mallarmé's poetry. It doesn't really seem to mean anything. It just gives you these weird feverish visions of things that aren't there. Anyway, second piece, Placette Futile, a slower piece than the previous. This means a futile petition. Futile, meaning it's not going to succeed. Again, beautifully realized piano accompaniment. Degout sounds heavier in this piece. I especially liked his sensitivity in the part near the end that starts with the words nomme-nous, so name us. There's some fantastic images in this piece from the poet Stéphane Mallarmé. Read the lyrics to this. It's nice. I liked it a lot. It sounds like something. I think Mallarmé's poetry really appeals to like college students, at least back in the day when I was in college, because we were trying to be we liked the surrealists and just these odd, cute things you could say to girls instead of like being this dopey romantic. You wanted to say something original that was going to knock them out, you know. And Mallarmé seems to have been good at that. Anyway, third piece, Suzie de la Croupe et du Bond, arising from the I don't know how to print it. From the whip and the croupe, I guess. I don't know what that is. The piano has an extended solo at the opening of this song, which strange harmonies are well highlighted by Tiberghien. Degout is good again here in the strange texts, in which, like the previous, Mallarmé imagines himself as a mythical figure painted on a ceiling. It's fantastic. I love this. I love these poems. This one comes off most abstractly of the set. It's well performed here. It was nice to hear these pieces for baritone and piano, a first for me. You know, looking at these, hearing these was wonderful, but looking at them again, boy, I really have lost a lot of my college self. You know, I just loved all this literature, and I still like it, but it just feels more like I feel like I'm more distanced from it now than I was then, and that makes me a little sad. Anyway, track 13 is the Concerto pour la main gauche, for the left hand. This was written for I forget who it was. It was Paul Wittgenstein, Ludwig Wittgenstein, the philosopher's brother, who was a professional pianist. The Wittgensteins were a very highly cultured, arty family, and Wittgenstein lost his right arm in World War I, and he was a professional pianist. So when the war ended, he commissioned a lot of composers to to write concerti for him so that he could play for one hand. Okay, and this is one of the ones he commissioned. Incidentally, he complained about every single one of them except the one written by Erich Wolfgang Korngold. That one he really liked. The thing he didn't like about this one was that there was too much solo music for him, like, because the piano plays without orchestral accompaniment for a long period of time. But that seems to be Ravel's concept, because he does the same thing in the previous piano concerto in the second movement. So in this case, the low bass line and the deep reed instruments come up sounding really great in the beginning minute of this recording. Wow, really better than I've ever heard. Although you'll have to turn the volume up to really get it. There's a good dimensionality to the orchestra's sound. We reach the big Hollywood entry to the piano at the second minute. Great sound, especially at the low end of the piano, which has a dimensionality that goes beyond the surface of the speaker. It almost kind of entered the room like a sound hologram, you know?
It's
kind
thundering. Waves just like ripple in on when the left-hand entrance comes in.
It was like, R2-D2 was like projecting Princess Leia into my room. Help me, Obi-Wan. You're my only hope. Anyway, Tiberghien plays this with power. It comes across. The piano line softens in the third minute, and it's all solo here at the beginning. This is what Wittgenstein didn't like about the piece back in the day. I like it enough. No problem with me. Glittering figuration at the 4-minute and 30-second mark. We finally hear the orchestra resuming its Hollywood fanfare at 4 minutes and 40 seconds with the piano again. Incidentally, this is written after the war in I think the 1920s, so the big orchestras were kind of in at the time. Big popular music orchestras. So far, the two of... By the way, it's 4 minutes and 40 seconds into the piece, and we haven't heard the piano and the orchestra play together yet, which is really odd if you think about it. I never really thought about it before. But let's see. Low drums come out with impact, the cymbals sizzle, and at 6 minutes, the piano comes back in, plays a line solo, accompanied by the arpeggiated bass, which again has an extra dimensionality. At the 7-minute and 10-second mark of this 18-minute piece, we finally hear the piano and orchestra together, more than a third of the way through the piece. Here, the orchestra has the main melody, and the piano plays figuration. But the piano is so up front that you hear it primarily. That doesn't hurt the recording, though. The recording is transparent enough that the orchestra can be heard. A marching theme starts at 8 minutes and 25 seconds, and it has a big impact. Incidentally, the piano's very forward placement is probably why that bass at the beginning impacts so much. I like it, I gotta say. The piano takes over the thematic marching material right away, and I love Ravel's orchestration. The brass accompanying is really great. Tiberghien manages to get the bass on his piano to growl at one point in the 8th minute. I don't know how he did that. But the piano is far up front, very clear sounding, beautiful orchestration for the flutes at the beginning of the 10th minute. Ravel wrote, and French composers in general write very well for the flute. They understand that it's they don't think of it as a wind instrument as much as a breath instrument. So they give it their flute lines a breathy quality. I really love that. It sounds really sensual to me. Gets me all hot and bothered, Anyway, the piano beautifully blends in with the figuration at the high end. The march continues. The piano is always audible, even when the orchestra is loud. Lovely bassoon and trumpet work at 12 minutes and 20 seconds. At 12 minutes and 40 seconds, the winds and piano blend beautifully. Piano gets another solo, quiet this time, in the 15th minute. You want to keep in mind that this is only one hand playing at this point. You can kind of tell it is at the beginning, but here, no, it's the illusion is there that you're hearing two hands. The illusion of wide range of frequency is pretty amazing at the 15-minute mark, so pay attention to that. This leads to the last appearance of the march theme in the orchestra and the end of the piece. It's a pretty great performance and a great recording as well, with the piano placed very far forward, but that doesn't hurt the recording at all. Okay, the album ends with one more poem by Stéphane Mallarmé called Sainte, with an E at the end, which means a female saint, I guess. This is a text with compelling images, beautifully sung by Degout here. piano accompaniment that starts with churchy chords and later starts imitating harp-like arpeggios. It's a brief but lovely work to end the album, full of these wonderful Ravel, well, you can't really call them orchestrations, but arrangement on the piano. I have no complaints about this album. The recording is excellent, spotlighting the solo instruments, yet picking up exquisite detail from the orchestra in the concertos. The vocal works is sung with warmth and played with the crystalline quality that Ravel's music invites. A real winner, though, perhaps not the best ever recording of the Ravel concerto in G major, but that's no problem. Really great.
Yeah, I really love the orchestral works and with piano. I thought the performances were great. Fabulous recording detail. Sounds lovely. I'm not as enthusiastic about the vocal works as you. I know that, among Ravel's works, a large portion of his composition output was for vocal works. It's harder for me to get into them, though. I much prefer his tone colors in the orchestra, and and especially the sort of the setting of the piano tones against the various other instruments, and so it's kind of a first for me hearing these songs. And I didn't dislike them, but I found myself just waiting to hear the piano and orchestra again. So I maybe would have liked to have these kind of separated as different works. I know what you mean. Yeah. Just for me, because I'm not, I'm more of an instrumental performance aficionado rather than vocal works. So maybe I would need to just isolate the vocal works in order to get a concept in my mind for them.
I myself am more of a one or the other, kind of like you're going to listen to vocal, you listen to vocal. I'll take like one vocal work in a program of instrumental music, but when it's kind of like even, there's something really odd about that. It just kind of, because words are important, and you want to know what's being sung, so you're concentrating on a different thing now. Okay, so it's just, it hits a different place.
I experienced that kind of push-pull, diversion of my attention in the programming itself. That said, I do like to hear a baritone voice a lot, so I thought his voice was had a lot of charm and brought out the material. I only listened to this once, so I would have to go back and focus on the vocal works, which is a side of Ravel that I know is an important part of his works, but I have not investigated enough myself. However, I can say that the instrumental works, especially the concerto, and then for the one hand are, I don't know if they're like you say, may not be the best performances, but they are definitely worth hearing, and the recording is intriguing. There's a lot to dig into, and the sonic space will definitely reward you. So, I think we can go on forever with Ravel's
one of my favorite
catalog
I should say.
Of compositions. There's always something new to discover in them, and he was definitely a genius of that time, and brought so much. He was absorbing the sounds of jazz and things into his music, and it's always beautiful. Inspiring, and always sounds fresh, even 100 years later now. We can keep listening to this forever.
Right, I agree. Incidentally, there's a new recording of Ravel's and I'm going to have to hear this, the cantatas that he wrote to try to win the Prix de Rome, which he never won. He entered, I think, 3 times or maybe even more, and he never got to win and go to Rome to study as he wanted to. But someone's finally recorded those works that they're younger works and they're not really in his style, but somebody's finally recorded them all. I'm kind of curious to hear those. Add that to my, they're all vocal works, obviously.
It's kind of interesting. I was reading up when we were, I was trying to place each of these works historically, and see what was going on in his life. See, he had a sort of interesting sort of progression in his life with his compositions and what was going on at the time, and the sort of rivalry that was forced upon him with Debussy, and the way people tried to conceptualize their music. And I just thought it was a real drag that people have to overly compare and analyze things. And I think that put a big weight on his shoulders, that people were trying to put all of his compositions into some sort of classifications. And he didn't really want that kind of...
Ravel was, from what I've read about him, he was just a really enthusiastic person. He just loved everybody else's music.
Yeah.
He really didn't have anything negative to say about anybody else's music. He just liked it all. Unlike Debussy, who, like Chopin, didn't like anybody's music unless they were dead.
Yeah.
And he even hated Beethoven. He liked Chopin, though.
Interesting.
He said some nasty things about Beethoven. Debussy did, not Ravel.
Yeah.
Ravel never said a bad thing about anybody. He especially loved all the Spanish composers of the time, like Albéniz and Manuel de Falla. And, of course, he wrote a lot of fantastic Spanish works himself. In fact, the French composers had an exceptionally good year for Spanish rhythms. They really picked that up exceptionally well. That's
interesting.
Amazing thing. Yeah. Another one of those things that somebody should do a doctoral thesis on. Anyway, why? How do they do that? All right, our last classical work for the night is a contemporary composer by the name of Eric Tanguy. Now, this album is called In a Dream, and it's Tanguy's chamber music, played by various artists. I will mention them as they come up, and this is on the Erato label. Erato is of course, like everybody knows. I actually memorized these. Now I can't even remember them anymore. She's the Greek muse of erotic poetry. Easy to remember. Erato, erotic, right? So,
wait a minute.
Anyway.
Isn't this Warner Classics?
I think Erato is now owned by Warner Classics, but it's on.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Erato.
it's interesting because
both of the labels are listed on there.
The cover says Erato, and then the listing is Warner Classics. So that's part of Warner now. Okay, good to know for the future.
Yeah, because Warner Classics stuff comes out as Warner Classics by itself too. It's really confusing.
Yeah,
I don't know, but because I think. Like Philips and EMI were both acquired by Decca now, and now they're all like on Decca. It's really because I remember like certain recordings being on EMI, and now they're on Decca. It's really
who can keep up with this corporate kind of cannibalization here? I don't know.
Just the less we say about the Sony label, the better. I just got a recording on Sony. It was Patricia Pettibon, and it's she would have been great for this too. It's just soprano arias, and they kind of presented it. It's on Sony, and they presented it like a pop record. Like it's got this kind of cool picture of her on the cover, and it's got. And what do you think is in the booklet? Of course, you have all these songs, and you have these like descriptions of the songs, but no texts. That drives me crazy because you're spending money on the CD. You should get that. I mean, it's crazy. I hate when they do that. And so I'm thinking to myself, oh, maybe they're on the website. Nope. They just present these songs. Like, you got to know the words. You got to know what the songs are about, because they're old. You got to put your head in that space. I
think you should lodge a formal complaint or reaction to that as someone who probably has more CDs than anybody else who bought that CD. You should definitely voice your opinion on that.
I have more CDs than I've had hot meals.
It's true.
Anyway. All right. Anyway, Eric Tanguy. Now, if you're an avid listener to this podcast, you might remember that we did his clarinet concerto on episode 37, Known Unknowns, from November 15th, 2021.
The Rumsfeld episode.
What was that?
The Rumsfeld episode, yeah.
The Rumsfeld episode. I don't remember why we called because they were like works by unknown composers.
There was a weird vibe on that one, yeah. Anyway.
I don't know. We were digging up names. Anyway, the thing about in trying to figure that, it took me a good 15 to 20 minutes to track that episode down because Amazon Music finally came up with it for me because Podbean, our host site, couldn't deliver it from their search engine. Jeez, trying to just find information about podcasts, your own podcast. Yeah. I mean, do I have to make a special database? It should just come up if I type the name in. Anyway, it's in the description, so should come up. Anyway, Amazon seems to have the best search engine, so congratulations, you win this week's prize, Amazon Music. or Amazon Podcasts. Anyway, so we thought that was pretty good. Now, this guy is known as a primarily modal composer. He uses a lot of modes in his writing.
He's got his own sense of harmony that he develops for each work, which is kind of interesting.
Now, here's the thing. So we heard the Clarinet Concerto, and that was only one work. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm wondering what this guy's music sounds like. So we have a set of his chamber music. I figure I could get a better sense of his overall concept from this album. And I guess I did.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. It's kind of, he's a bit elusive, I think. Anyway, this starts out with his quintet for piano and string quartet, and the musicians are Suzana Bartal on the piano. She's going to be on most of these works, by the way. And the Quatuor Diotima, who are a pretty well-known string quartet. They play a lot of contemporary and 20th century music. They are Yung Peng Zhao on the violin, Constance Ronzati on the violin, second violin, Franck Chevalier on viola, and Pierre Mollet on the cello. This piece, it's one track and it's one unbroken stretch that falls into 3 linked sections, which the composer describes as a mysterious opening. I wouldn't call it that. I'd call it more of a spacey. He thinks of that as mysterious. It kind of sounds a little bit like a science fiction-y to me. Early 20th century Viennese expressionism. That's what I thought. You know, something like early Schoenberg's atonal music, but not loud. Then pulsating intensity. And then the second section would be lyrical and contemplative passage. And then the third section, tumultuous, exultant finale at breakneck speed. So the intro and then the pulsating intensity. Anyway. This is kind of a circular opening. The so-called mysterious theme is a bit circular, not unappealing. It goes on to something more solid, and it's not a long stretch to get to the pulsating intensity of the first through the fourth minutes. I like the technique in the fourth minute where piano strings and chords together with scales leading to each chord, like close on a line, like you hear like a and then the bang, the chord. And he does that quite a bit. That seems to be like part of his musical vocabulary. I heard it in other pieces as well. The lyrical contemplative passage is melted into the beginning at the 5-minute mark, and we're fully into it. This is the second section that he talks about at 5 minutes and 30 seconds. There's some pretty haunting harmony around the 6-minute 40-second to the 7-minute mark, and this seems like it sounds like troubled contemplation, let's say. The strings come across as on edge, though the piano is more or less calm, despite a few chordal outbursts. Lovely haunting harmonics at the 8 minutes and 30 seconds to the 9-minute mark. And the music starts getting fidgety and agitated at the 9-minute mark, and by 9:28, we launch into the final section, the tumultuous, and he says, exultant finale. I didn't hear this as exultant, though. It's got kind of a mechanical quality to it, and there's an edge to the rhythm. He said this is at breakneck speed. I don't think so. Maybe it is, given the figuration that needs to be played. I mean, but to the ear, it doesn't sound like that. It doesn't sound, when I think breakneck, I think something is in danger of going off the rails, you know, like a train that's going to, and this doesn't sound like that. It sounds like an excellent performance, though. So, yeah, the description may be off. The instrumental combinations are pretty compelling to the ear, so it's a pretty good piece. The next piece, track 2, In a Dream. This is the title track of the album, written in 2013 to 2014. This is for violin and piano, and the violinist is Alexandra Conunova, and Suzana Bartal on the piano again. Now, this piece was commissioned by the Tokyo-based violinist Akiko Suwanai for her festival in Nagoya for her to play. And it's a poetic, turbulent piece. He uses that word a lot to describe his music, turbulent. It was written in response to Tanguy's artistic dialogue with Suwanai, okay? The title alludes to the serene atmosphere of nighttime, although not without a number of more dramatic outbursts. The piece is played in one unbroken stretch as a continuous variation. So it's got a fairly quiet opening, low-end ominous chords from the piano and the violin playing melodically, reaching its upper register. The violin gets some really dramatic, powerful melodies to play in this. The piano more or less keeps to this type of accompaniment, occasionally throwing in echoes of what the violin plays, but this is very much a work for the violin. It is indeed a set of continuing variations. The violin plays alone at 255. Very pretty crystalline piano chords at around 330. And the violin plays a gentle gossamer thin tone over that, accompaniment over that. By the 6th minute, the accompaniment has dwindled down to individual notes in the piano, and the violin continues its rhapsodizing. The piece ends tranquilly and quietly. It's a nice piece all in all. I think this would grow on me if I heard it a few more times. But the first time I was kind of, had the pen in my hand, so to speak, so I kind of wasn't really catching it all that. All right, the third track, Spirale for cello and piano, means spirals. Written in 2016, Edgar Moreau on the cello and Suzana Bartal on the piano. This was one of my 2 favorite works on this album. I liked it right away. Lively and fast, the idea of whirlwinds or spirals suggested itself to Tanguy in the writing of the interplay and dialogue between the 2 instruments. It starts off energetically with the cello playing a circular figure, which seems to be a characteristic of Tanguy's writing, because we heard it in the quintet as well. It snaps into a repeated linear figure, which also happens in the quintet. Quick changes in this piece. Repeated notes lead to an upward scale, then some repeated circular figuration, and this is all in the first minute of the Quicksilver 6-minute and 28-second piece. The piano takes over at 1 minute and 23 seconds, playing rapidly yet quietly, and the cello joins in. The cello goes into its lower register at the beginning of the 2nd minute and plays pizzicato for a bit. Then by 2 minutes and 41 seconds, he's high up again, and the piano is agitated and thundering out chords and a theme in the higher register. There are some cool sound effects produced by the cello's bow at around the 3-minute mark. Tanguy again has the cello line string a theme across chords in the piano at about 5 minutes and 30 seconds. I like that effect, as I mentioned in the quintet. And the piece culminates in a rapidly approached resolution, excitedly taken at the end. I actually found the piece pretty stimulating throughout. It's fully caffeinated and compelling performance here. I'm also wondering about these kind of circling melodies. I think modal harmony tends to really invite that sort of thing, at least the way he uses it here. So we're hearing a bit of that on this album. 4th track is called Nachtmusik for solo piano. And this is Suzana Bartal. What is that?
This one reminds me of the many nights when I was like walking home after a night out, with inebriation and that kind of slow, sleepy night walk home. It really captures that kind of ambiance to it.
Right. It has a narrative structure. Again, mysterious at the outset. He seems to like this word, mysterious. The dreamy quality gradually gains expressive intensity until the nightscape is permeated with flashes of richly sonorous lightning.
Yes.
And I mentioned here, this calm to disturb his trajectory seems to be a quality of Tanguy's works. He seems to do that a lot. It's a fairly meditative opening, slightly bluesy, and a lightly swinging rhythm, which is created by the organization of the notes, not by the rhythm the pianist is imposing on the piece or anything like that. So it's not really a jazzy piece. It's about 7 minutes long, and the meditative material clouds up in the first minute as more agitated material takes over and expands. The agitated material suddenly disappears at 2 minutes and 30 seconds as the piano quietens. There's a brief crescendo and decrescendo. Then at the 3rd minute, chords come thundering out. They dissipate, and we're into the higher end of the piano in the 5th minute with crystalline chords, reminiscent of Tiberghien and the recent recording we heard, the previous recording. I should mention this piece is very chordal with a lot of pedal point bass notes that don't last that long, really, but they hold for a while as the chords change over them. Slowly changing over the wandering material in the upper voices. Again, that modal harmony allows the chords to float over the pedal bass. It's fine. It has an appeal. I don't know. I gotta hear this again, I think. It was good. 5th piece is called a Rhapsody for viola and piano. Yeah. And this is Lise Berthaud on the viola and Suzana Bartal on the piano. So it's a rhapsody. Has an overriding sense of melancholy, and the composer mentions that the viola song. Oh no, I'm thinking of something different here. Hold on. Okay. This is a longish piece, actually 10 minutes and 21 seconds, and right away, just hearing the viola appear right at the beginning with its darkish register is pretty exciting. You don't really get to hear this instrument much in this context with a solo with a piano. The viola plays solo from around 1 minute and 40 seconds on for a while. There's a bit of passion in the viola at around the 2 minute and 30 second mark. And the piano accompaniment echoes a lot of what the viola plays. We've heard this in some of the previous works as well. The piano is alone at 3 minutes 50 seconds. Again, this is sort of like the cello and the violin piece. He'll often give the two instruments like some time alone. Then it plays chords in the bass and in broken up harmonic chord-like figures in the upper range. There's a nice run up the keyboard, then back down from 4 minutes 20 seconds to 4 minutes and 40 seconds, with the viola imitating and occasionally squeaking its approval. I kind of liked the viola's little remarks in there. The viola plays lyrically after that. It and the piano get many brief solo sections in this 10-plus minute span of this piece, and it ends rather tranquilly. It was good. I liked this a lot. Track 6 through 8, Sonata Breve for solo violin. This is played by Alexandra Conunova. And the movement titles speak for themselves. The first movement is called Lyrique. And the violin is passionate here as well as lyrical. There are a lot of slight glissandos sliding into the note that I found pretty compelling in this movement. The modal quality of Tanguy's writing stands out in a solo piece like this, just for the violin. You can hear it pretty clearly. The violin sounds caught in its space as it floats between tones for most of the movement. The second movement is called Étrange, or Strange. Excuse me. It has a quiet, evocative opening. Fairly minimal material with a few warmer, longer-held tones. There's a lot of double stopping in this and the previous movement. This starts at 1 minute and 10 seconds or so, and there are nice quiet trill fades to end the movement. Just need a little drink there, getting a dry throat. Okay, third movement, Vertiginous. This has a perpetual motion quality to it. The violin races through its motoric material. Melodic ideas outlined between repeated note figuration. Generates quite a bit of energy and excitement, and Conunova plays exceptionally well through all three movements. Track 9, Lacrimosa, which is part of the Catholic Mass's Requiem, or for the Mass for the Dead. This is for clarinet and piano, and Pierre Génisson makes an appearance here. He was the clarinet soloist of the clarinet concerto that we talked about in November, so he's back here for this piece. And Suzana Bartal on the piano. This piece was written, it was finished the day after Henri Dutilleux, one of the great composers of the 20th century, who Tanguy knew, died. So it's got this sense of melancholy to it. Génisson, gives a quiet atmospheric opening with gorgeous clarinet tone over the mid-range piano arpeggiation. This is a good example of the composer writing for the tone of the instrument. He really captures this well. Tanguy captures the strengths of the clarinet's various tones, and a quiet section goes on for about 3 minutes. Then the music gets more agitated, and the clarinet plays buzzing trills at around 3 minutes and 45 seconds and afterwards. I like the arpeggiated piano accompaniment, which sets the clarinet off well. The floating modal harmony suits the clarinet's tone well, too. And this is another work that, for me, stood out. So I liked the cello work, this one, and Spirale for cello, and this one, Lacrimosa. Those are my two favorites, so those would be the ones to listen to if you don't have much time, if you want to sample. The 10th track and last track is a trio for violin, cello, and piano. Completely, different musicians here except for one. Rosanne Philippens plays the violin, Edgar Moreau is back on the cello, and David Cadbuch on the piano this time. This piece's inspiration comes from Tanguy's close friendship with Cecilia Zahn, who is a French-born cellist who's apparently of Chinese descent. And it's a continuous variation of tiny motif of 6 notes, and the motif generates the entire harmonic basis over which the work unfolds. So like a Beethoven piece, I guess. This starts out with a rhythm in triplets in the piano, followed by wispy statements from violin and cello. One of the appealing things about this piece is how it's going to change from 6/8 to 4/4 very often, or 3/4 to 4/4. I didn't really count it that closely. The piano material is crystalline and initiates a lot of what the cello and violin play. There's a brief dramatic episode at the beginning of 1 minute and 40 seconds, and we're back to quiet tones again. Then a new conversation starts. The violin, piano melodic, the piano introducing material that the violin and cello repeat and expand on. Then in 3 minutes, we switch to 4/4 with the piano marking time. He's playing on all 4 beats to really underline that. Another adventurous episode at 4 minutes. It sounds like we're now in 6/8. 4/4 returns in the 5th minute with wispy, drawn-out lines by the strings. Please try to notice these rhythm changes. It'll make the piece more interesting to you. The violin gets the spotlight at the beginning of the 6th minute, and then the cello briefly takes over. They play together again. The piano seems to end the section and begin another one at around minute 7, which begins with the piano in its bass range. The new section is filled with rapid bowing tremolo effects on the strings. This is like after the 7th minute. And building piano volume, then goes into a repeating pattern for a while. It breaks out at 8 minutes and 30 seconds or so with a downward moving figure. Higher energy repeating figures below, quickly switching from one figure to a new one. The material at the end caught my ear. Interesting held harmonies by the strings, linked chords in the piano, and it has an emphatic ending. So all in all, listening to this recording, I got a bit more insight into Tanguy's approach to music. I sort of want to go back and listen to the clarinet concerto again after hearing this. The performances here are all excellent. The works themselves are good, and I think they may grow on me over time. I kind of feel like when I'm listening to these, like I'm missing something. And I think it's me. I don't think it's the recording. I think I'm kind of like, there's something there that's not really connecting with me that I have to kind of figure out or just let go and let take over me or something like that. This composer, it's a little frustrating for me. He has my ear, but I'm not really getting it. You know what I mean? So I guess I have to hear more.
I have some idea about that. I think, he is a composer who's trying to work out his own kind of musical language in the contemporary landscape of things. And my take on this, he's a very rhythmic composer. So all of these works incorporate lots of development and variety of rhythms in here. So all of the pieces have some rhythmic elements that we'll explore. And there's some traditionalism in the phrasing and development of his works too. So you'll hear ideas that are expanded upon and brought back, and in the phrasings, it's all very traditional, like that. But what he's doing is experimenting a lot with harmonies in these kind of modal things, or kind of discovering a new kind of harmonic language based on some ideas. And then, of course, the melodies are adapted to that. And I think that's where I find the challenge in his music, that it doesn't meet my expectations based on what I hear in the lines that go through. Not that's a good or bad thing, but it challenges me to listen to that. One thing, let's see, which one was it? I think it's like In a Dream. When I listen to that piece, it sets this very dreamy atmosphere that matches the title, has these kind of lush harmonies that he develops. And I feel like the melodies, the way they move, I hear them and my mind sort of completes the phrase into something more pretty, but they can't become that. And so it's sort of like I'm setting up expectations for where the movement of melodic ideas go, but they don't go in that direction because he has something else planned based on his ideas. However, there's a lot to hold on to in the structure, and especially the rhythms. I think the last, which piece is the last one? In the piano trio, it's sort of built on these 6-note sort of motif figure, which seems like a very limited type of construction. It's based on what the album notes say. Yeah. He's really does amazing things out of, expanding on that figure, and then the harmony that's constructed around that. And, he builds sort of a conventionally composed piece around this sort of new idea. So it sounds very familiar and at the same time defies your expectations of what's going to come out of it. And that's what I think is sort of the paradox in his music. It's frustrating but intriguing at the same time.
Yeah, but I would think with repeated listenings, those frustrated things would just become like you expect it because you've heard it so many times.
Exactly. It may very well do that. Yeah. So I think that you can, on the first listen, you'll only be hooked in by the familiar elements of it, and you may have to listen more times once you become comfortable with his language and the conventional elements, and then you can look deeper and to see, what unique sort of compositional ideas he's exploring underneath those kind of ideas. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting, contemporary composer now that gives you a kind of interesting new harmonic language, enough compositional and traditional sort of development that you can hold on to where the pieces are going to, but yet there's some things that you'll have to figure out in your mind and explore as you listen to the directions that the music goes as he takes it. It's kind of intriguing. Yeah, I'd be willing to give these an extra few times to listen and see what else I could gain from them as I listen to them.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing. When I listened to this album, it went by really fast. I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's it. It's over." And it's not because it's short or anything. It's about an hour long. Is actually, I think it was around the 70-minute mark or something like that, which is pretty normal for a classical recording. Yeah. So it must have been compelling enough to make the time go by that rapidly, and that's another element to like, wow, I guess I was really kind of absorbed or drawn in. Anyway.
And I think too, as a French composer, he's very sensitive to the kind of timbre of the instruments, and so we've got a lot of variety here. Violin. And then viola, which is always sort of left to the side a bit, and then clarinet.
I especially got that piano with the viola and clarinet. Yeah, it's that timbral kind of like
So I think he's interesting in that it's not just timbre, but he's interested in the sort of capabilities of each instrument too, and bringing out some uniqueness, because these works are all very different. And so rather than sort of conforming the instruments to his style, he seems to be investigating what those instruments are capable of expressing in their own, unique capabilities and strong points. And I like that too. So I think there's a lot to explore in his compositions, and I just kind of scratched the surface on this listening.
Right. Okay.
That's the French. That's what getting French brings out of the music to you. Yeah.
Yeah. And now we're going to get Frenched with a bit of that rhythm there.
Yeah.
The jazzy rhythm.
Well, we're going to go to the jazz thing. Now, I approach this a little different than I usually pick, so I'm there's some really good stuff here, and then I'm a little befuddled in some of this too. So we'll see what it brings out. I've always got a few French things on my list, and so when we decided to go all French for this episode, I just picked some. I went by variety and newness, and we're going to get some mixed results here. The first one is going to give us something kind of hard to talk about, but I like this album, and it's kind of interesting. And that's we've got trombone. That was the other thing. You only get a limited number of things on trombone, although I have enough for another trombone episode now. Anyway, with French trombone, this one stuck out, and this is by the young French trombonist Robinson Corey, and his second release as a leader, Broken Lines, and this is on the Gaia Music Productions
That's a good title
label.
For this album, actually.
Yeah. This came back out in April. This is about 2.5 years after his first recording, Frame of Mind, and he comes back with this very interesting mix of material for this album. He's only 27 years old, and this is the kind of description release note says he explores a dense and deep musical universe, and I'd say I agree with that. There's a lot going on here. Anyway, it's an interesting and difficult to explain bunch of compositions here. So we've got Corey on trombone, which he has virtuosic technique and monstrous chops. And accompanying him, we've got Pierre Tiberghien on guitars and also voice. And I should mention, Corey also contributes his voice and singing qualities to this album in some interesting places. We've got Marc Priore, piano, Etienne Renard on bass, and Elie Martin Charrier on drums and also voice. So there's some vocal things happening on this album. And there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here. I'm going to do my best to explain it. But what I should say is his approach here and what he's doing is largely in sort of a compositional approach. And it's very non-standard in terms of, jazz composition, where we'll get, sort of verse, chorus, verse, and things with bridges and things like that. So he's being very creative and designing things in the composition realm, which sort of defy your expectations. And so when you're listening to the sort of flow of the material, it's kind of hard to see patterns and things in here. There's a lot of original things popping up in all of the tunes. Anyway, let's take a run through what we've got here. Track one is Cubism, and that's with a K, K-U-B-I-S-M. It starts out with kind of repeated piano patterns of eighth notes, and then Corey comes in with a legato trombone line over the top of that. There's heavy bass and piano hits that come in to accent some sections and cymbals washing around in the background there. The trombone and piano lines morph into patterns with different notes. Corey overdubs another trombone line in a very high altissimo register. There's some lightly percussive guitar figures in the left channel that stick out in your ear, especially if you're listening to it in headphones. At about 1 minute, a new fast tempo rhythm emerges in repeated patterns in the piano and guitar. It becomes like a 5-beat meter. Corey adds a new melody line, punchy bass backgrounds or brass backgrounds on the bone there too. More, I think, overdub tracks there, yeah. It transforms a bit with bigger hits and drum fills. Then it transitions to another feel with more rhythmic piano chords, a new trombone line with rising intervals that works into an intense soaring trombone line. It keeps building. At about 4 minutes, it becomes very frantic. There's a sudden pause, then it resets more softly with acoustic guitar faintly in the background and affected trombone lines that pan left and right, then become a bed of soft, articulated rhythmic notes. Out of that comes a final section with a trombone solo line over a walking bass with high piano and guitar notes. Anyway, it's hard to describe what's going on here with the constant evolution of rhythms and sections, but it's constantly refreshing itself compositionally, moving towards whatever goals he's seeking musically. And certainly the trombone playing is virtuosic.
Yeah, I wrote it 4 minutes and 32 seconds that when it suddenly quiets down. There's a lot of busy, quiet interplay between brass instruments, kind of like there's a secret life being lived with them.
Yeah.
I don't know what I mean by that, but maybe you could listen and figure it out.
Yeah, you got to listen to this because a lot of what, like I say, the key of what he's doing here is sort of a compositional exploration. And so you've got to be attuned to the quick changes and new sections that constantly emerge in the directions he's trying to take each of these songs. Anyway, number 2, Distancing from Reality. This one, some claps, hand claps, that is, set the beat at the beginning for soft bassing guitar rhythmic figures. It sounds like one measure of 4 and then a measure of 3, so you get kind of this 7-beat feel to it. Corey blows a soft lyrical melody over the top of that. He has a great singing kind of tone on the trombone that's appealing. There's a break at about 1 minute. The piano joins in with lots of huge cymbal splashes and drum fills behind. Then Corey adds a lower and heavier melody here before soaring up higher again. Around 2 minutes, there's another little break and a piano solo from Priore. His left hand is soft with rhythmic, clear, articulated lines and runs in the right hand. Charrier works up some tight drum fills behind as the piano solo builds in intensity. And then Corey adds a kind of snaking modal line on top with the trombone with high shakes on those notes. It breaks down to just trombone over guitar figures. And he mixes kind of rhythmic and then soaring trombone lines over that. And the rest of the rhythm section joins back in for a slow but determined push to the end with a new beat emphasis on the final lines. Track 3, Emptiness Monochrome. This one has a solo trombone intro, some interesting syncopated interval lines. Eventually the bass joins in on the lower line with him, and then there's some light cymbals in there too. Terriot has a skittish little guitar solo. Then Corey joins back in, works into a section of repeated low growling notes with ascending piano pickup licks, or piano licks on top of that. There's a new, more lyrical section that emerges with deep bowed bass and a melody outlined in both trombone and piano. It builds into a full volume theme for a while before it returns to the interval melody idea. Then there's a new section with repeated one-note bass and a distorted guitar solo, some panning distorted trombone muted notes in lines that sort of together with the guitar bleed this angsty feeling. That gives way to a lighter but intense piano solo of runs with Corey sometimes joining in on backing figures. Trombone is back for a final full blast theme over intense drumming, and it drops off into a final interval statement for the ending with guitar. Now we've got there's two kind of pieces on here, and this is the first one. Estampe number 1. Guitar intro here with eerie bass bowing sounds and a high voice, human voice that is, that makes a kind of tense atmosphere into some piano chords and more whale call like bass bowing. The bowed bass gets a solo over the piano chords. Then Corey joins in on sometimes adding muted effects, sometimes moving with the bass, then adding high crying sounds before joining the bass for final lines to the end. This tune kind of stays amorphous through the whole progression of the tune. Track 5, Kasaya. A hand drum sounding beat, and this is like a kalimba type sound here. I don't know if it's a guitar effect or what's going on. It
sounded
here.
like that thumb piano, like the
that's what it sounds
kalimba,
like.
Yeah.
That makes an intro for percussive and fuzzy bass to join in as well on these kind of muted fuzzy guitar things too. It works into a hypnotic vamp that piano and trombone add unison lines over. There's a section of high vocalizations and then back to the trombone and piano with other little surprises before everyone joins together with multiple voices in vocalizations. The lines have an Arabic modal quality. The voices and trombone work into some ascending and descending slurring lines, and then Corey emerges with an edgy trombone solo. After some high vocal wailing, it moves into a new melodic section over more rhythmic piano figures and then returns to the bass vamp ideas from the beginning for some final playful improvisations on the trombone and answers from guitar and piano. Track 6, Breaking the Lines. There's a vocal piece in English over guitar and bass. It's rubato with guitar mirroring the vocal melody. Piano and cymbals also add some backing and fills between the phrases. At 2 minutes and a half or so, Corey blasts in with the trombone. it stills, kind of moving rubato, and then comes back down softly with the trombone coming to replace the vocal melody. Piano and guitar trade off improvisations as a beat forms in the drums. Then Kaori returns on trombone as the beat kind of turns rubato again. There's a final vocal verse, and breaking the lines, the image of this kind of tune, the lyrics say, "Oh, how I wish I could slow down." And then in a spoken voice, "But life decides it won't stop going faster than before." You think the tune would end there, but sort of embodying that idea, there's some frantic drumming and kind of a speedy final trombone line to finish it off. So life doesn't slow down, but actually speeds up at the end of this tune. Track 7, To Do. This has some pulsing, descending vocalization figures that make an intro. After a breathy pause, a bass solo emerges over these vocalizations. There's another pause, and then bass and piano work soft unison lines over the voices that speed up and slow down to the end. And track 8 is sort of a part 2 coming from track 4, a stomp at number 2, a short tune of only 2 minutes. Angular trombone lines with some disparate and dissonant piano and guitar between phrases get things going. Finally, Kaori gets momentum and breaks into an angsty solo with some tricky figures and rips on the trombone before finishing off with another angular line. Goes into track 9, Moods. It's a longer one. A dreamy ostinato bass and piano line set a mood with some cymbal washes. Kaori's trombone and a distorted guitar work together on a melody that has some scoops in pitch. Kaori emerges with a solo line that has some interesting vocal-like crying qualities to it. A heavier, driving drum beat develops as guitar and trombone join in again into a percussive piano solo over low, grungy guitar chords. Kaori adds angry, low backing notes to push it along until a quiet reset at about 4 minutes. The bass takes over with some interesting rhythmic solo lines under Kaori's legato notes, then continues on over the soft drums, piano, and guitar. The trombone returns for a bit, and then there are some spacey electronic sounds that fade into a drum solo at about 6 minutes. Grungy distorted guitar intrudes like a monster breaking through a wall.
I think I said something similar here. Yeah.
Pulsing single note bass line comes in. Kaori enters too with some electronically distorted trombone, and he emerges with a new clear trombone tone on a line of improvisations, and then working with the guitar into a final melody line that reaches the end with a ripping phrase. Then we've got number 10, Stomp number 3, another short track, rhythmic piano figures, and then melody make a base for contrasting distorted bass and trombone blasts. There's some more plungery trombone and bass that turn pretty for a final strain to the end. Track 11, Circled Blocks. This is a muted long trombone blasts over rhythmic guitar and bass figures to start. Things keep changing up with rhythmic surprises and piano added into the mix. Surprising syncopation and running lines keep emerging as it builds with more open trombone, no mute then. Renard and Charia keep it tight with interlocking bass and drums. The trombone melody modulates around, and there are chiming descending piano lines. At about 2.5 minutes, a new dreamy high trombone line and synthy guitar floats, and a new drum beat and bass come in. There's a lot of complex rhythmic interplay under the floating modal trombone cries. Things soften as Kaori becomes more rhythmic, and the beat drops, moving into about 5 minutes. Motion starts and stops, and then some vocalizations and speaking voices or spoken voices rhythmically play around until the end with a bass hit and a laugh by all involved. Track 12, the final track, You and I. We get a slow vocal count in to 4 beats here. Guitar, muted plucking, and piano set a dreamy ambiance over long bass notes for another English vocal number. It's a pretty melody, Sail Away, You and I. Guitar adds some interesting backing affected ideas. Cowie takes a trombone solo that has a lonesome crying sound, and then he returns for another verse. The melody that he's written and sings here has some very big interval jumps that almost get him yodeling here. But, obviously he's not a vocalist in Maine, and though his emotion that he conveys through it is kind of endearing in the charm of it all. And so that ends the program. It's a very adventurous project compositionally. He's going through lots of changes in these pieces, not conforming to traditional structures. Really, there's lots of unexpected changes. The instrumentation is interesting. His trombone solos are all virtuosic. He's got a huge range, lots of technique. It's a challenge to follow what's going on all the time, but he's got big ideas and he's young, lots of energy. I like that he incorporates a lot of modal things in here too. Kind of interesting. It'll keep you on your toes to listen to this trombone adventure.
Yeah, and as you said, you really need to hear this to really get what it sounds like, because it is hard to describe. Yeah. It's a pretty adventurous album with a surprisingly pretty ending. Like you and I, the very last track was kind of a bit of a surprise there. Yeah. It's a challenge, not very straightforward. To me, though, in the French fashion, I thought the overall timbre of the instruments plays a large role in communicating this music. A lot of the themes are angular. Time signatures are not straightforward. And when they are straightforward, like if you're getting a straight 4/floor, it's going to be a really aggressive 4/floor. Now, it's a pretty adventurous album. You remember maybe at the beginning of the week when I heard it, I really wasn't up for this because I was having a rough day. Yeah. And then I put this on. I was like, oh, this really isn't what I need to be hearing now.
Yeah, it's not easy listening.
I am a professional, and I listen to it with my kind of musical ears there. It's good, aggressive, dark. And I think it was kind of a meaningful album, but in a bleak way. I don't really think this comes off as being a very positive statement, although the last track is. I don't know. Yeah. It's something compelling, a little bit of an adventure, but I'm not going to return to this, I don't think. It's not that it's bad. It's just kind of, I don't really want to feel like this all the time is the thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's an exploration, and I like that he puts out...
It's exciting. It's an exciting record.
With
and like you said, lots of great virtuosity in it, and
this kind of mix of these vocal
ideas.
Things. And what's interesting most of all is that he's doing this on trombone, so it's not we don't hear enough trombone anyway. But we don't. When we hear trombone, we sort of have this locked in concept of it's going to do this and that, and so he's kind of actually really pushing the boundaries of kind of composition and other ideas. And then adding trombone into that. And, so it's sort of outside of the box of, the normal kind of jazz idea. But, I think it's interesting. And trombone players should hear it for his great technique. And if you're looking for something a little bit pushing, mixing in sort of modern modal kind of ideas, and then maybe some other ethnic influences in there, it's worth a listen. And exciting. I'll probably check it out again, and I'd be interested to see what he does next, since he's kind of young and full of all these ideas.
Yeah, I don't think that album will annoy the neighbors the way that that early Petter's Vasque piece would.
No.
It's just adventurous. It's really hard hitting.
Yeah, check it out. Up and coming and new. I like new concepts, even if it takes me a while to get used to them. Somebody who's especially, I think for a while now, I've thought that the thing pushing jazz forward, since there's so many great, young players who have mastered the techniques now that jazz has become something academic that you can study, is sort of new ideas in composition and concepts. So when I hear someone who's going to take things in a new direction with his compositions and this sort of whole envelope of sounds around that, I'm pretty interested. Generally. And this one moved me in that way. All right. Now we're going to go swing a little bit traditional, but also fresh at the same time. Probably my top pick of this week's three. And because
mine too, and the one I probably should have listened to when I listened to the Cour.
Because we love organ, and so this was on my list with French in the tags, and so I said, well, we got to get this one out, and this is Mathieu Martheray, and I guess he labels this project that he's involved in as Springbok. So it's Mathieu Martheray Springbok, and the title of the album is Involutions, and this is on the We See Music label. Nice name. Came out last month. So we've got an organ quartet here, and we've got Martheray on our beloved Hammond organ.
Yes.
And we've got someone we've heard before, the French trumpeter, and he's also on flugelhorn on this release, Julien Allure. And we heard him back with his own solo album on episode 53. That was our episode entitled All Horned Up. And his album Light in the Box on Vita Productions. We like that album a lot, and so it's nice to hear him again. We've got American-born, but now living in France, tenor sax and bass clarinetist Robbie Marshall, because he's originally from the San Francisco Bay Area in California. And rounding out the ensemble, Thomas Delors on drums. And, well, this is a really fun album. I really like Martheray's concept. He doesn't really... This is not like a soul jazz kind of album. He's got his own kind of concept, and he's not a show-off at all. And really serves the music, and he's got all original compositions here. And so he's also a pianist, and he's born in Grenoble in the French Alps. And, well, he's played around in France, did some time in New York, and now currently residing in Paris. He's done a lot of organ work, kind of inspired by the hard bop and Blue Note records of the 60s. But I think he's got his own thing going here. And let's see, he's got a number of recordings out. He's got Reg 2001, Connections 2005. And I guess reading on the notes of his sort of recording history, having a hard time getting a bass player for lots of recordings, that kind of inspired him to take up Hammond more, where you can take up the bass with your own bass pedals. And he also won, the Lavoisier Scholarship in 2002 that brought him to New York to study for a year at the New School University there. And so he's moved on from there, keeping organ as one of his main output vehicles. And so here we've got this interesting recording, all original compositions by him. And we start out with Pigeon on a Chessboard for track 1. This one starts with a drum pickup into an 8-bar intro, syncopated horn and organ note hits. Things soon get swinging on trumpet and sax melody. The organ floats in a step nicely for another line underneath. There's contrasting B section to the melody before part of the A section comes back. Trumpet and tenor sax then have an improvised conversation over Martheray's bass pedals and Delors' drumming. Martheray gradually helps build it up with some organ chord hits. The horns end it up kind of coming together on the original melody lick, and then there's an organ solo. The organ sounds really big in the recording. I like the full capture of the tone of it. But he plays very relaxed, lots of spaced out phrases. The horns come in on backing lines for support, and then everyone joins in for a run through the melody again with a few repeats of the penultimate phrase to build tension. Track 2 is called Open Air, and this one starts with an intro of some descending and then intervallic pentatonic organ notes played percussively. After a little pause, Martha Ray gets things going with pairs of 3 rising notes outlining an 8-beat feel in the rhythm. There's a slinky flugelhorn and bass clarinet line. This is like a lullaby that come in for the melody on top, while Delore mixes little subdivisions and bigger hits on drums underneath. Martha Ray has some nice moving foot pedal bass lines between the horn phrases here. The harmonies in the tune are interesting. Allure is up first for a solo. Then Martha Ray adds percussive chord hits and little swells behind his flugelhorn lines over the slow groove that's kept with the foot pedals. Martha Ray gets a solo next, and you can tell by now, we're into the second track, he is not a show-off player, but rather carefully works out his ideas. I like the little peppering of staccato notes in his solo, in contrast to the other lines. The horns slink back in for some backing lines that tie into the melody to the end. And then Marshall reminds you that he's on bass clarinet here at the very end with a little descending figure on the final hold at the end of the tune. Track 3 is called Fragments. It has swinging fragments of horn lines that alternate with measures of drum fills over held organ notes for the minor melody. It ends in a little break for Marshall to show, or rather to start his solo on tenor sax on this tune. Martha Ray is walking out an intense bass line on the pedals, adding chord hits to cheer Marshall on in his solo. Allure is next on trumpet, tying his lines together nicely while mixing up the rhythms in his phrases. Martha Ray comes up again. Then an organ. I like the way he uses a lot of hesitation on the start of phrases in his solo. Then he trades off with Delore for some drum solo spots, and finally they run through the fragmented, constructed melody again to finish things up. 4 is called Hymn, and this has an organ pickup entrance to this slow, loping, gospel-y tune. Martha Ray carries it from the start with an improvised melody. Legato harmonized horn lines form on top. Marshall gets a sassy tenor sax solo, next with Martha Ray giving great swelling gospel backing lines to that. The horns then merge into a new melody line that has some varied rhythms into 3 long held notes to milk it at the end, with Delore pounding out some final drum beats. Track 5 is called Roots. That's also listed as DW Part 1. This is a very short piece, just over 2 minutes. It starts with a call and response conversation between trumpet and sax that get it going, with a quirky figure of tricky intervals and rhythms. They merge into a melody line incorporating the figures and longer harmonized notes, while Delore beats out a busy 6/8 groove. It breaks up with sax and trumpet doing kind of Q&A phrases, with the organ this time before the organ sustains, and the horns keep lines going over the top of it. The horns and organ trade off again, and it gets more intense as it pushes to the end. It's a short, mostly composed piece with no real solos, but the arrangement is very cool. Then we get, I don't know, my French pronunciation is not so good. Prelude
and Ut mineur.
Yeah, Prelude in C minor. This is based, his own, Martha Ray's own composition based on Chopin's Prelude number 20, opus 28. Flugelhorn and bass clarinet. Oh yeah, we got to get that bass clarinet in.
Yeah.
Start together.
Organ and bass clarinet on the same album.
Yeah, great.
Twist my arm.
They come in together for an intro on this slow waltzing tune. Allure takes over for the melody with a nice fluffy tone. Marshall adds a soft high counterline before taking a section of the melody for himself. And Martha Ray has been playing soft support, but comes in with a full tone next for a solo with some classically influenced phrases. He brings out a little bit of a Chopin-ness in that solo there. And Marshall is next with a legato bass clarinet solo, gets down low, then up high, before he goes down low again, and suddenly getting back to the melody in the upper register of the instrument. Lots of jumps he makes here. Then Allure gets the final strain on trumpet or flugelhorn here, with Marshall harmonizing to Martha Ray's final church-like chord to end this one out.
Yeah.
Track 7, Whirls, a little drum intro to some call and response riffs between sax and trumpet that then join together on the minor melody. It's got an intense 6/8 driving beat that Delors kicks up as it builds with swelling chords from Marthe. Marthe gets the first solo, and then Allure next. Marthe has some nice footwork going on in the bass pedals and works up some walking bass lines here, also more percussive chords behind Marshall's tenor solo that follows. They work back into the call and response melody, which comes down and then builds back up to the end, with Allure taking it up a bit higher in the range at the end. Then we get track 8, Time. This is DW Part 2, another short 2-minute track. This is another version with the basis from track 5, but a little bit simpler riff in the horns. This one gets a little bit more sear going to the groove as it goes along. The syncopated horn lines keep it driving right to the end. So another kind of composed piece. And track 9, Social Credit.
What a
It's
title.
a phrase we don't want to hear very often. Chinese overtones there. A 3-note horn riffs over heavy drumming from Delors get this one started. Allure takes the main melody, the first phrase of which reminds me of the old Odd Couple show theme. I don't know, it just kept bringing that back to me. It's a medium 4/4 swing. Sax joins in for harmony, and Marthe adds nice little counterlines to the horn phrases. On the repeat, Marshall swaps roles with Allure, and on the phrase before they work it back together. Marshall is up first for a solo. He takes his time to build up with slinky lines and a silky tone. Then Delors adds more kicks to the swing on the drums behind as it builds up. Marthe is next for an organ solo. He's swinging tightly, nice articulation, quotes back from the melody often in his solo. The horns come back in on the melody, and then they stretch it a bit into the section at the end for Delors to get some drumming features in the final notes. Track 10, Certain Uncertitude. Flugelhorn and bass clarinet here trade legato phrases over organ chords on each beat, and then the trumpet takes the melody with answering bass clarinet lines. It's a slow, tentative rhythmic movement, hence the incertitude from the title. Marthe keeps the idea going in his solo with an even beat chord hits kind of figure between his phrases. The horns return with long-lined backing phrases. Allure gets a solo next. He focuses on being lyrical with relaxed phrases. Then he returns to the melody with backing from Marshall on counterlines. After a little organ interlude, the horns finish it up with a new repeated lick in octaves. And we're going to finish up the recording with Bounce Neuf, I guess, which is 9. And this a groovy organ riff starts things out, and the horns add offset, echoey, syncopated notes on top, matching the riff idea with some drumming textures from Delors. That must be the bounce idea. It's almost like a boom-pa, 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 that kind of almost echo answering phrase. It smooths out in contrast with a legato sax line that gets harmonized from Allure. Then it builds up with some intense drumming from Delors underneath. The volume comes down for some solo trading from Marthe, Marshall, and then Allure. They all join in then after trading off, improvising. Let me try that again. Improvising together, building it back into the intense legato sax and trumpet lines over the heavy groove that Delors is playing. Then it ends with a final strain of the offset riff idea again.
By the way, before that title, Bounce Neuf, I think that neuf is going to be new. So a new bounce. I think it's an adjective here. Okay. It could be 9 as well, but I think in the context it would be new. I'm guessing. Yeah.
I guess that kind of bounce thing is that kind of almost echo, between the horns hitting there. So it's kind of cool. Anyway, it's a fun and fresh album. Thanks to these original compositions by Marthe. The arrangements are well thought out and detailed, but they leave a lot of space in them, which I think is nice. And the players all match his concept well. Marthe is not a show-off player on an organ at all, and everyone seems to match that idea of serving the tunes with their solos. There's nice lyrical work from Allure. Marshall does a good job, some hot tenor and kind of silky lines, but he has a different personality on bass clarinet, which is nice. It's like a whole different concept on those tunes. Delors gets aggressive on times at drums, but I like the way he drives the tunes and picks up the intensity in the right spots. I think there's a lot to discover on repeated listens to this album. So if you're a fan of organ jazz albums, you should definitely check this one out.
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, repeated listens there will be, because I like this. Okay.
Yeah.
And I felt the same sort of way. I liked, for me, the opening tracks were really the most appealing, but I think the later ones were also good too, but I just need to hear them again, I felt like.
Yeah.
Bass clarinet, all our favorite instruments are on this. We have the Hammond organ. Everybody's serving the tune, which is something I always approve of.
Right.
I really do like that. I'm fine when people stand out, but I'm more of a tune person myself.
Yeah.
Everything, kind of serves the song, sort of. Yeah, this one's definitely going into the collection, I'd say.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Where, the whole of the ensemble, and especially, these are all fresh compositions, so you got to take a while to get used to them. But they're well thought out, and they all have their own, nice little grooves and little pockets of things, and all the musicians are in tune together. So you got to listen to this more than once to get kind of a feel to it.
I'm trying to think how many organ recordings I have from this year so far. There are a lot of them.
I'm addicted to them. Yeah, there's going to be more coming.
There's the Delvon Lamar one. There's going to be the Brian Charette one that's coming. Yep. And then there's the one that he plays on the Doug Webb. Yeah. And there's Yako.
Yeah.
And oh man, this kind of lots of organ in the collection this year.
Yeah,
and I've got more.
I've got enough for at least 2 more organ episodes. So
I'm not necessarily gonna. I mean, there were some that I passed on, but they're all worth hearing. I think But even so, a lot of them are kind of hitting my ear and going into the collection now. So
this one's great because it's all new compositions, and he's got some. The way the musicians get the concept here is really nice, so you should definitely check this one out. Now we're going to get to one that I have to say, for me, is a bit outside of my realm of appreciation. And anyway, this is trumpet release, Antoine Bergeron, Chromesthesia. This is on the Menace label, and I listened to the first track and I read some reviews, so I thought, I liked the first track a bit, and
the xylophone, it was cool.
And I after reading the instrumentation, I thought I was going to be more into it than I was. It's just because I'm not an electronic music fan. And that's what this turned out to be mainly focused on. So his previous release got a lot of critical acclaim, Moving Cities, and I saw some reviews of that. And I also saw some of this one that looked promising. It just turned out to not be my thing. Anyway, Bergeron, born 1982, and he's kind of an established figure in the European jazz scene, and getting some notoriety, kind of blending jazz with a lot of electronic music and ideas, which I'm not so much into, but I thought I'd be open to it. But my kind of feeling on the whole album is there's a lot of tracks with no trumpet on them, and it gets
this
into
was a bit of a rough listen, but there were elements of it that I really liked, so I'll point that out.
Okay, you can point them out, because I got sort of lost because I'm not an electronic music fan too much. Anyway, here we are with Bergeron on trumpet and flugelhorn, and also writing all of the material. The main group features Enzo Carniel, Fender Rhodes piano, MS-20 synth, Xaba Palotai guitars, and affected guitars, Gauthier Toe, Prophet synthesizer, Arnaud Domain on drums and percussion. We've got some guests, Samuel Laviso, percussion on tracks 2, 6, 9, and 10, Gianni Casaretto, guitar on 9 and 10, William Christopher, bass clarinet. I think but I couldn't hear it on track 10. And Jose Meniel, bass flute on track 10. I could hear that on here. Anyway, we're going to start out PBDQ. This is a track I heard before we picked this for the episode. It starts with a melody played on flugelhorn and electric guitar, moving together with an open interval kind of harmony feeling underneath. There's some Rhodes that sneaks in as it repeats. Deep bass and drums join in with an exotic groove, and the guitar works an arpeggiated backing. Bergeron solos using lots of modal ideas that fit over the chords beneath what he's doing, getting some cries and trills in for effect. The Rhodes pans back and forth, left and right, and the guitar has some crunchy chord ideas. They bring the original melody back over the heavy drumming from Dolman and then play it to a final time, kind of sparse as it was in the beginning of the tune. When I heard this, I thought, okay, I can be up for this, a little electronica mixed in. But from here on out, sort of lost me in the weeds. Track two.
One thing that kept me listening is the bass sound. It's got this big, heavy, goopy sound, like it's just being drawn from this bucket of bass sludge. It's really, I really like
that's
that.
There for sure.
And you hear that throughout the album, so that kind of kept me in it a little bit.
Track 2 is where I started to fade out. Red Lines. It's less than 2 minutes. It's an R&B groove with deep bass, lots of synthy sounds, extra percussion. There's some pitch bendy things that happen near the end, but there's no trumpet on the track.
Yeah, I said this was chilled out and mildly druggy.
Yeah.
It's atmospheric. The whole piece, this whole track is atmospheric, so yeah.
Track 3 is called Walk. Starts with a synthy cycle of keyboard chords. An even rock drum beat goes round and round. Bergeron puts a melody line on top. There's some crunchy guitar backing too. It's a big wash of sound that keeps driving along. Bergeron joins back in with some melody riffs. Things get quieter. The drums drop out after 3 minutes with some chiming guitar figures and piano. At about 4 minutes, 20 seconds or so, trumpet rejoins on a line working with the keyboard rhythmically. The drums have snuck back in with a new groove. There's a piano solo working across that groove with changing harmonies. Then Bergeron comes back in with some trumpet improvisations into a final melodic line to the end.
Yeah, I kind of dug the rock groove, and it's kind of atmospheric.
One of the better tracks, yeah.
But they just kind of ride the groove. Really, there's no real soloing in this, but it was it was okay.
It's all right.
It made me feel good. Anyway,
next track is Meeting Point. This is electric guitar chords, kind of crunchy and open. Get it going, joined by a heavy drum beat. Bergeron brings in a trumpet melody line that's modern and modal. There's a big wash of keyboard sounds underneath it. The chord cycles go around for a bit, and Bergeron comes back for a solo. He does some exploring of the upper register, finds some tension spots in his lines. The beat fades away for a solo, echoey guitar section with some slides, slide guitar that is, and then percussive ideas. Bergeron comes back in for a solo. Sounds like on flugelhorn here over the new, softer atmosphere. He plays fluidly, lots of graceful lines, full of little ornaments, soloing over the end of the relaxed flow. I mean, I think he's a really good player, and I like his ideas. It's just I'm not so big on the, environment that he's created and situated things in. Track 5, Mind's Eyes. A tentative flugel intro in unison with piano notes comes into some amorphous clouds and drumming over which Bergeron solos freely. It quiets down with a steady beat that forms interjected with rhythmic piano figures. Bergeron plays some more improvised solo ideas and then, after a pause, introduces a new melody doubled in the piano. The piano then takes some improvisations over the pulsing movement while drum fills and crunchy guitar sounds fill in the background. Bergeron comes back in again with another melody line alternating with piano figures to the end.
Yeah, I got nothing here. It was okay. But,
Track 6, Photism. Slow and synthy sounding intro. It's a big wash of sound with some extra percussion. It gets caught in a loop of descending chords and no trumpet appears on this track as those chords cycle on.
This particular track kind of has like the sound field kind of wavers, and there's a band in the 1990s called Portishead that used the same effect, and it kind of reminded me of them a little bit. Yeah. So I was kind of like, I dug that a little bit. Anyway.
All right. Track 7, Horns and Battle. Another synthy intro with tricky drum beats, for sure. Bergeron plays the melody line over the unusual groove. There's a Rhodes piano solo with some guitar stabs added into it and other synthy backing sounds. Bergeron returns for some fast-running solo lines, rhythmic ideas over the mix, and it ties into the melody line at the end. Track 8, Solar Hit. It's a rhythmic Rhodes riff to get things started. Trumpet and drum hits interjected together. Bergeron gets into the groove with rhythmic figures mixing up the piano for a bit, then alternates some more flowing lines occasionally, and it goes on like this to the end.
Yeah, this sounded pretty produced. It sounded like there were a lot of overlaid repeating patterns. Yeah. It kind of sounded like, to me, spaced out Philip Glass, like Philip Glass.
I'm getting a little
really
too
spaced out,
too electronically produced by this point.
Yeah.
Track 9, Life in Ochre. Synthy piano and guitar chords make an exotic, dreamy atmosphere with other synthy sounds and a few acoustic guitar kind of parts that are added in here. It's okay to listen to, but there's no trumpet. And there's not going to be any trumpet on the last track, Chromaticism, which is very short, about a minute and a half long. This is a psychedelic wash of guitar and keyboard chords. There is a bass flute in there. I can barely hear it. There's supposed to be a bass clarinet in there too, but I couldn't pick that out even on repeated listenings, and there's no trumpet in that one too. So for me, this is kind of a no-go because when I hear a trumpet release, I want to hear the trumpet a lot. And this seems to be sort of pulling between two worlds of, electronic music ideas and trumpet, which,
Russ being a trumpeter, I should mention.
I have no criticism against his trumpet playing. I liked what I heard, but I didn't hear enough of it. And yet I heard a lot of this electronica. Maybe I'm an old guy now, and I just don't understand or appreciate this electronic idiom. But I think it needs to be better integrated, and certainly I don't want to hear tracks without trumpet on them as well.
If you don't understand it, it means it's kids stuff and it shouldn't be on the adult music podcast, should it?
Yeah, whatever.
No, but this isn't. This definitely isn't kids stuff. Okay.
No, well, he's not a kid, actually. I think he's in his 40s now anyway.
For me, electronica, generally speaking, isn't my thing either, but it really depends on how it's being done. There are certain electronic bands that I really like. Yeah. But in this case, I like the totally fat electric bass sound. It was, it's kind of like Peter Gabriel Sledgehammer type of goopy oozing along to it that I really liked a lot. And the grooves were all satisfying. And I said that I liked the album, but I don't really think it stands out in a way that warrants me hearing it again. There's a lot of electronic alterations of sounds in this, and I'm really just interested in experiments like that in passing. So I was, happy to hear it, but I don't know. I think I got it. You know what I mean? I don't really need to work at this anymore.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's just not my thing, but I'd like to hear Bergeron in a different context. I want to hear him stretch out more. I feel like the solos that he got were just kind of snippets, really. I liked what he did, especially on the first track, with some modal ideas and moving around. So I'd like to hear him in a more traditional concept because, hey, I'm a traditional guy. I'm old now, and I can say my opinion. And this is our podcast, so...
You're old school. Well, it's our platform. We have a platform.
We have a platform. That? Yeah. Anyway, I'm open to checking things out. This one, like I said, I just checked out the first track. I thought I might find more that I liked, but,
Yeah.
These ears are old. I want to hear those old instruments. I want to hear the piano and the woody bass and those electronic sounds. I can't do them so much anymore.
I remember my grandmother used to say, like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks about herself. Why would you do that? Like she didn't want to change, you know?
Yeah. Anyway, if any listeners who made it this far, I got to tell you, well, before I tell you what's coming up, let's just say that thanks again for our logo to Fast Signs of Staten Island. Got that neon popping look, and that helps us stand out amongst all the other icons that come up on all the podcast platforms. So thanks again. We appreciate that. And again, if you enjoyed the podcast and you're still with us at this point, do like or subscribe on whatever platform you're on. Check us out on Facebook. If you check us out on Facebook, you also get the playlist for next week, which I'll upload tomorrow. So you'll find out what we're going to be listening to, and you can listen to it before the podcast if you want.
Right. Well, we've got to say what it is because we were teasing.
Well, I'm going to get to that. That's right. And so next week is Greek Week.
It's Greek Week.
And so we're going to feature all Greek music in classical and jazz music. And not only that...
And this is going to be a rare thing because there just isn't that much Greek music released on CD or in classical music. But I've got 3 albums, miraculously. 2 of them on the Naxos label, who are very adventurous. They put out a lot of international stuff. So
and we're going to I got 3 Greek piano trios. And I've heard 2 of those. They're all really intense and good. So you got French this week. You're going to get some Greek stuff next week, all on episode 68 of Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. And stay tuned. We'll see you again next week for episode 69 and some Greek fun. And in the meantime, if you want to check out those recordings, look us up on Deezer or Facebook and get the playlist for next week early, starting tomorrow. So until next week then, keep listening. We'll see you again next time.